Okay, good morning. I will call to order this meeting of the Oversight Committee. It is 8:33 a.m. Mr. Taylor, please proceed with the roll call.
Hey,
Here,
Margot,
Here.
Dr. Cummings,
Present.
Hernandez, Mr. Montgomery, Dr. Patel,
Yeah, but he's bland.
Vice, and Dr. Rosenfeld. Here. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Dr. Hernandez previously notified CPRIT that he would be unable to attend today's meeting. The chair will entertain a motion to approve an excused absence for Dr. Hernandez.
Second.
All in favor vote aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. The chair will entertain a motion to approve an excused absence for Dr. Rice.
So moved.
All in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Members, you have the draft minutes from the May 19 and May 20 Oversight Committee meetings in your agenda packet behind tab 1. I note for the record that the minutes of the May 20th meeting contains a note clarifying that we approved 59 academic research awards, not 60, as verbally stated during the meeting. The misstatement was due to a last-minute withdrawal of one applicant. Are there any corrections to the minutes as circulated? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 19 and May 20 Oversight Committee meetings.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next agenda item is public comment. Texans created CPRIT. Opening our meetings with public comment underscores this board's commitment to transparency and accountability. Mr. Ellis, has CPRIT received any requests to provide public comment?
We've not, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Doyle will provide the Chief Executive Officer's report.
Good morning, members. Today is our last meeting of the fiscal year, so we will be taking up several items that we just take up once a year. We're also going to have 2 great presentations from our advisory committee and following up on the work that you guys did at your work session on May 19th. We will have the inaugural members of the AI Advisory Committee for you to consider. So it's a big meeting. It's been quite a fiscal year. We've talked about it a lot. We, for 6 months, have been working with the state auditor's office on our efficiency audit, thousands of pages of documentation, hundreds of hours on both the state auditor's part and CPRIT staff. We're in kind of the very last days of it. The state auditor has notified us that they plan to provide all of us, so Oversight Committee members and CPRIT leadership, with the final report on Friday. So you have that to look forward to. They will publicly release it on Tuesday. And we have already communicated with them about how, of course, the Oversight Committee is eager to talk with them about the reports. We were hoping that the timing would work out where they would publicly release the report before the meeting, but they are doing many efficiency audits and finalizing those. So the timing didn't work out exactly correctly, but we will be having an audit subcommittee, special audit subcommittee meeting after the report's released so that they can present. It is something, of course, we've all taken very seriously, and, from the agency's perspective, and you guys are very mindful of this also, every dollar that we spend on administration is a dollar that we don't spend on grant funding. And so we're all share the interest in making sure that CPRIT is operating as efficiently as possible, because that means something in terms of projects that we're able to fund. And to that, blends into another kind of big milestone. We have been working for now years on the new grant management platform. I think you guys all remember we started talking about this in the summer of 2024 about how important this was, our existing platform that has served us for more than a decade, just had a lot of inefficiencies built into the system. But it was going to take not only a commitment of money, and $11 million is a huge commitment for us, but also thousands of hours of staff time to design a new grant management platform. And so we have, seen the fruits of that work. The legislature approved capital budget for us and allowed us to get started immediately as soon as the session ended on getting that work in place. And so we now were able to release the first module of that, which is the application receipt system. So for the academic research applications are going to be coming in for the second cycle of 2027. They will all be submitted through that module. Our Chief Information Security and Data Officer, Soma Emaniki, will be talking about that also. And, in addition to that, we are also nearing the conference, 3 years in the making of our innovations conference, and you'll hear about that from Heidi. And then, of course, the regular work that we do in terms of awarding grants. We'll be looking at, I think, let's see, more than $35 million in grants that we'll make. And since this is the August meeting, we're kind of, making sure that we spend every dollar that we have. So if you looked at my memo, if you approve the grants as we present them today, we will have $24,000 remaining in our grant funds. So you guys have done a great job in making sure that we spend every dollar that we have for those grants. And we're even, we even have continue to defer some grants in the event that there is the possibility that we could, if we get notified of a CPRIT scholar recruit not taking the grant, to possibly try and, that would require quite a lot of work at this point, but we remain ever hopeful that we are going to spend all of our funds. The only other thing that I'll tell you is, we continue, this year has been a big year of transition in terms of this fiscal year has been a big year in transition for our staff. So we have a new Chief Product Development Officer. I think many of you had the opportunity to meet Dr. Patrick Clayton when he attended many of the subcommittee meetings, and he is here today. We also have a new Assistant General Counsel in Savannah Cohn, and she is here also today. So Savannah, if you want to raise your hand. There you go. I know many of you met her on our subcommittee meeting, and we just celebrated the 1-year anniversary of Dr. Hebert as our Chief Scientific Officer. And I know also it seems like Dr. Reckes has been here, 4 years, but, she's joined us just 10 months ago. So we have, almost within this past fiscal year, our entire leadership team in terms of the programs has new, fresh eyes, fresh perspective. And so we're really looking forward to what that's going to mean, especially as we look towards the 2027 session. And so that's what I'll close out with. I know January seems far away, but it is very close now. And in fact, Heidi and Grant and I will be going over to meet with staff from the Senate Finance Committee after the Oversight Committee meeting to talk about our LAR. And we've got meetings with leadership staff next week to also be talking about our legislative appropriations request. And so that will really kick off the season in terms of what we're looking for. And Grant Weaver will talk about this when he makes his presentation, but I think most of you know, we've all state agencies have received direction from leadership to reduce their budget by 3%. And so for CPRIT, that will mean fewer grants that we can make. So that is the change that we have made to our LAR since we presented it to you at the May meeting. It is obviously our number one exceptional request now that we receive full funding so that we can continue to fully fund all of our grants. So with that, I will let us move on with the meeting and the great presentations that we'll have. And of course, can answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Doyle? Thank you. So welcome to Ms. Guthrie, Dr. Clayton, and Dr. Hebert. Congratulations on 1 year. That's very exciting.
And I should add this, I think most of you know this, but obviously Dr. Smith is still with us. He's in the audience. And he has returned to his position as Chief Intellectual Property and Due Diligence Officer, and will continue to work with the product development program. He will also be doing quite a lot of work with the academic research program. As you know, we've talked many times about this, but the intellectual property database is what we use to catalog all of the IP that CPRIT funding has helped create at the academic institutions. All of that's important because it feeds into, one of the reasons that IP database is important is that it feeds into us knowing about when the institutions are having revenue sharing generating events, licensing. It also helps us know and be able to report in terms of what CPRIT funding has helped create in Texas. But it requires quite a lot of work and self-reporting from the institutions. You'll hear later today from our internal auditor about an advisory, the first stage of an advisory opinion that we are getting from them regarding our intellectual property practices in terms of tracking and working, particularly with the academic institutions because of the self-reporting. And so all of this is a long-term plan that we've had in place in terms of having Dr. Smith head up that work for us so that we can fully integrate that IP database into our grant management platform and really document what is happening in Texas for the many different reasons that it's important to know that and help further develop the technology that CPRIT has helped fund. Now I'm really done. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Okay, the chair recognizes Mr. Burgess to present the Chief Compliance Officer's report.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure. And I don't know how it happened, but y'all got better looking from the last time I saw you. So my reports behind tab 4, especially you, Mr. Margot. And I'll just highlight some of my the exciting things in compliance. I love the opportunity to talk about all the good things we do, often behind the scenes and what keeps the show running. So on page 4-1, as you are aware, we have on average about 540 reports submitted monthly. And as of August 1st, we just had 3 outstanding reports. So that's well below our threshold of 5% or about 28. So kudos to our grantees for getting those reports in. Financial status reports are submitted quarterly by our grantees, and they come into the agency. The grant accountants do the first review. They come over to the compliance group to do a second level review, and we did about 560 of those in May, June, July. And I just wanted to point out the statistic there that we gave you there in that second line. 31 or only 6% needed resubmission, and that's fairly significant reduction. We have been averaging 15, 17% for a long time. And so a huge shout out and kudos to the grant accountant team for all the work that they're doing, working with grantees to submit those and to really get that resubmission rate down. In terms of desk reviews and on-site reviews, it's been a very busy 3 months. We did perform 20 enhanced desk reviews and 11 on-site reviews, which are, we obviously go on-site and they're pretty detailed reviews and extensive. We are only working with one grantee for their on-site. So that means most of them had no findings at all, which is a very positive thing. And in November, we do our annual report. And so we'll give you more data on the total number of on-sites we've done for the year, the number of findings we had, and give you the data for the last 4 or 5 years. So more to come on that. In terms of match expenditures, this year, fiscal year so far, grantees have submitted over $43 million in match expenditures. And we have reviewed all of those for potential duplication of expenditure. And we selected a little over 21 million for a more detailed review to make sure that they had support documentation and it was an allowable cost. And we've identified about $202,000. And mainly they were either reported on an FSR, so we couldn't give you credit twice. They were expenses claimed before the grant started, which are unallowable. And again, in November, we'll give you some more data, but this represents 1% maybe, or less than 1% of unallowable. And when we first started doing this, we were at about 7%. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've really decreased that significantly. Of the top of 4-3, I do apologize. I'm forward thinking, but it is not fiscal year 2002-07. But the FY 2027 grantee risk assessment is being completed. This isn't to be confused with the internal audit risk assessment that Dan and Mr. Weaver will talk about. This risk assessment helps us determine monitoring for the coming year. And we're looking at, as you see here, we're looking at the grantee's experience administering CPRIT grants, past performance on desk and on-site reviews, and the number of grants. And that really helps us determine whether you're going to get an on-site review or desk review, or are there specific training and areas that we need to address with you specifically. Which takes us down to the training support. Again, very busy last 3 months. We had our second series this year of grantee trainings. We had about 120 grantee staff. We conducted 1 new grantee training, 4 new authorized signing official trainings, and 5 technical assistance trainings. So the staff have been very busy, and I'm just so proud of the work they do and such a great group of people to work with. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Burgess? Oh, yes, Mr. Taylor.
Oh, yes. You get compliance points for that. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I appreciate you leading by example.
Sorry, how the new grant program will help your job as a compliance officer. I mean, I've heard some of the things that it flags. It sounds like it helps you dramatically.
We're very excited about the opportunities that the new GMP presents. Just yesterday, we were on a call with the team and looking at some of our processes that we can integrate. Right now, we have 4 or 5 different spreadsheets and trackers we use and many disparate systems that are going to be integrated into the system. Another thing that we're excited about is in some of the resubmissions that we're seeing for FSRs, we're anticipating that the GMP and the AI component will help catch and flag some of these, maybe even before they're submitted, right? So we're looking at some exciting things. You know, Soma and I had a conversation just yesterday about that. So we do anticipate realizing some efficiencies in the new system. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Burgess.
My pleasure.
Turning to the certification of the award slates that we will consider today.
So excited.
Mr. Burgess provided the written report certifying that the proposed awards and review process complied with CPRIT statute and administrative rules. Are there any questions for Mr. Burgess? Okay, there are no questions. Now I believe
Now I can go.
you're free
Sorry
to
about
go.
that. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Dr. Hebert to introduce, the Program Integration Committee's grant award recommendations. He will also provide the academic research program update.
Thank you. It's great to be here again. Let's get started with our first slide. I'm just going to jump right into the Program Integration Committee recommendations. Yeah, I don't need to. See if we can get the slides up.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful photo. Let's just stick with that. No, that's not mine. Not mine, but it's much better than the recommendations. I had a great summer vacation, but we don't really want to hear about that. While we're waiting for the slides, I was going to save this to the end of my presentation, but Kristen mentioned that I'm wrapping up or starting my second year. So I'm no longer a rookie. That's great. But I just wanted to thank Kristen, Heidi, all the entire staff. I can't name them all because it would take too long, but the team over at the Travis Building, they've just been fantastic. And as well as the Oversight Committee, I really appreciate everybody welcoming me, making my job in the transition really easy. I understand for many people when they give up their lab research, it's really mentally hard to give up that discovery engine and part, but it's been so much fun working with CPRIT and learning the processes, and it's been great, and I've just really enjoyed it. So I just want to thank everyone publicly for all of their help, and really do appreciate it.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you. We're getting close. We've got slides, but they're not mine. And we don't want me to make a cancer epidemiology presentation.
So I'll put you on the spot and say, for your past year, what has been kind of the most interesting thing, something that was unexpected, that you did not foresee when you joined CPRIT?
I mean, aside from how exciting the Oversight Committee is, I mean,
That goes without saying, of course. Oh, here we go. No, it's the travels around Texas have just been so enlightening, and to be able to understand the needs of our Trek institutions specifically has just been really terrific. And you'll see as we're starting to plan for other ways that we can really lift up some of the other institutions that don't have an NCI designation yet, because we want them to get there. All right. Thank you so much for bringing up the slides. All right, we will get going. So we really worked hard during the year to plan our budgets, and so we're really pleased that in this last meeting of the year we have $31 million left to spend, And that's sufficient to support 12 recruits for and this is the really the focus of this quarter's activities. These 12 recruits hit 7 different priorities, and I think it's especially pleasing to me to see 3 of these that touch on childhood and adolescent cancers, and 2 that actually focus on liver cancer. So it's really, really fantastic. And then we also have one that focuses on prevention and early detection survivorship. So that's really also great. I just want to spend a little bit of time going through these recruits, and I'm not going to spend too much. So if I'm going too fast, please interrupt and ask questions. But I want to save time because I want to do a little bit of looking forward to fiscal year 27, as well as looking back into the year that we've just completed or are completing. But I want to highlight a couple of these investigators. The first here, Dr. Ikehiro Seki, is perfect score on his application. He's coming from Cedars-Sinai and going to UT San Antonio, the Health Science Center there. And what's really exciting about this is he's been tapped to be the inaugural director of a newly established liver cancer center. And he's a world expert. He spent time at Columbia, University of California, San Diego, before moving up to Cedars-Sinai in LA. And he's gonna catalyze so much growth. And being the inaugural director of the center is just gonna be fantastic. I'll just point out that he has over 45,000 citations in his record. So it's fantastic. And then the second perfect score we had in this group was Daniel Cahill from Massachusetts General. And he really is a brain surgeon. So, it is brain surgery in this case. And, he also has a lab and does clinical work on glioma. And so that combination is just super rare. And so we're really thrilled to be able to try and pull someone out of the Harvard system. And so fingers crossed on that one. And then we had 2 more established investigators here, one going to the University of Houston, which is always terrific. We want to have more recruits going into the more emerging institutions. But I want to really highlight Dr. Carla Berg in this case, because she is the person working in prevention. She's an expert in smoking cessation. We don't get that many applications in terms of the prevention space. And so in terms of these established investigators, so we're really thrilled to be able to try and recruit Dr. Berg. So that's a very exciting application. And then moving to the first-time faculty awards, we have 8 of these. The highest scoring was Dr. Lee, and he's coming to us from the Dana-Farber at Harvard. And he's really doing some really cool work on epigenetics and breast cancer, and super excited about this application. And I won't go through all of these, but I want to highlight a couple. Dr. Sai Gurasankar has done some really, really important work as a postdoctoral fellow, where he's trying to take transcription factors, those factors that turn genes on and off, and reverse their activity through small molecules. A completely new class of small molecules, new class of drugs could come from this work. And so it's super exciting. I also want to point out Dr. Santa Rosa, because she's going to be going to the UTMB. And again, we want to really support their emerging cancer research program at UTMB. So we're really excited by that application as well. And then we have a second applicant from UT San Antonio. So very excited about that. Dr. White is a structural biologist, and he's actually developed a whole new system of doing electric field simulation, X-ray crystallography. So very esoteric, but very cool work. So we're really excited by that. And I won't go through the rest of these, but so that wraps up the slate that we're putting forward. So this is $31 million worth of recruitments. And now I'd like to look forward a little bit in terms of the fiscal year 27 to talk a little bit about what we're trying to do in the next year. These are our recruitment RFAs that are up. Again, we'll just remind you, these are up to $4 million for an established investigator, $3 million for Rising Star, $2 million for first-time faculty members. But we do want to emphasize it's up to. One of the things we've noted in our travels is that some of the emerging institutions, the Trek institutions, they have trouble with coming up with a match for a $2 million award. They would actually prefer smaller awards. So we've written into the RFA that if you are more at the 1 million level, we will take that into consideration during the review process. So we're hopeful that we'll get more applications from our Trek institutions and other emerging institutions across Texas. So that's I think is one of the things we're really excited about. And then just looking forward in terms of the RFAs, in terms of 27.2, we've started a new RFA called the Texas Regional Training Award. These are again focused on Trek institutions, the emerging institutions, maybe those that are even close to an NCI Cancer Center, but they're emerging. These are going to be training awards to fund graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. They're smaller. Again, they're $400,000 a year for 5 years. But we're really excited about trying to build a workforce around these in these institutions, sort of helping the research come from the ground up by funding graduate programs. And what these institutions are exceptional at, even today, whereas the research may not be at the top level where they can compete with UT Southwestern and MD Anderson, they can compete at the training level. They do a fantastic job of teaching. And so we want to build the teaching, but at the same time, build the research by funding graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. And I think this is going to have a big impact. So we're very excited about this and how this will be received going forward. Now, oh yes, please.
Training for what? Training to become research scientists.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you think about it, I think if we just use an example of El Paso, since we have if we can fund 10 new graduate students in El Paso, that's building a workforce, and then we might be able to recruit cancer, research teams, companies to move to El Paso. That would be the dream, where they would actually have the workforce then to do that.
So the question is then, is the award going to the graduate student or is it going to the program?
It always goes to the institution,
Yeah.
and then they will fund students.
So so it's the program that's training the PhDs or
Correct.
whatever. And
Correct.
so
That
we're
is
getting training programs to apply for these grants.
Right. So we're going to try and stimulate and have them recruit another 10 students, for instance, to work on cancer research at these institutions.
Well, but just to follow up that question, our recruitment awards go to the institution, but it's based on an individual's work and their
Absolutely
moving
correct.
to Texas. So
Yes.
I'm still trying to understand, we're going to give money to a program based on current graduate students' work, or how are we judging that?
Yeah. So the way we judge these research training programs, first and foremost, is what is the pool? So what's the quality of the students that they normally recruit, and how can they use this award to increase that quality and quantity? So that's a big focus of it. And then we'll be looking at the training program that they'll institute for these students. So it's not only the pool, but then it's the quality of their training and their teaching abilities. And then the research comes into that as well. So it's a 3-component evaluation. It's the pool, it's the actual classes and the training program, and then it's the quality of the research that these students would be doing. So it's a yeah, that's how they're evaluated.
So it's a pay it forward type idea that
Yep.
we see promise and we're going to facilitate supporting that.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And we don't know how many of these applications that we're going to get, but there's been quite a bit of interest. So we've gotten a lot of questions about it. So we're excited. Yeah.
I'll add just kind of to your point, just anecdotally, you know that we document all of the publications that credit CPRIT funding. And so, I see kind of a running, history of that during the year. And we see several times that sometimes the only relationship between CPRIT funding and that research is from a training grant. So, the people that are, part of that training program are able to do research that then is getting published, on behalf. So there is quite a lot of work that's, happening. So certainly paying it forward, but also happening real time now. And then of course, our hope is always the better the training, the deeper the roots, they will stay in Texas,
Sure.
And, start their careers here and continue to serve the state.
But we're talking about second authors here. We're not talking about,
Oh, no, the students would be for first authors in-
Okay.
in Mika.
All right.
And in most cases, they're required to publish at least one, if not more, first author publications before graduating.
that's excellent.
Absolutely. So, yes, I think that even the NCI designated centers that I've talked about this program to are excited because there'll be another group of PhDs where they can recruit postdoctoral fellows. So it's going to, I think, help all of Texas. So I think this is a very exciting program to initiate. And I just want to thank you all again for approving the advisory committee on artificial intelligence. We've been building out the committee. We now have 11 members. We're going to add an ethicist. I think that we're going to, and probably looking still for some people from corporations, so some artificial intelligence companies to add to the committee. But I'll just point out the last person on this list, they're certainly not last, Dr. Kutub, from the University of Texas at San Antonio. And she's from the University of Texas at San Antonio, not the Health Science Center. So excited by this. And she's actually launched a couple of artificial intelligence companies. So we're excited to have her. And so we've been tapping our NCI directors and leaders of cancer centers across Texas to come up with this list. We've got a great diversity of institutions represented. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And Dr. Rice isn't here right now, but he's obviously been a driving force behind this, and I want to thank him for his support. So it's exciting. And I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the year that we're just completing. It has been a tremendous amount of fun for me to dig in and learn this, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've been doing. You all were super flexible and agreed to let us play a little bit with the recruitment awards. We reduced the size, and the goal was to make more offers, and we've done that. We've actually, as you can see here, we've made 10% more offers. It's just 3 more. It's 33 versus 30 from last year. You'll see the little what's in parentheses is where we're up from last year. But we actually have more applications. We had more high quality applications. That is more. We have 45 applications that were recommended by the Scientific Review Committee as compared to 34 from last year. So we were only able to recommend 33 of those to be approved by the committee. But it's a big number. It was, $87 million. And we think we're doing pretty well so far. And this was really ultimately the goal. In 2023, we had 18, 24, 20, we got up to 20, and 25 got to 22. We're right now sitting at 15, 16, but we're with the 12 new that we have, we're hoping that we'll get to 25, and we have the opportunity to get all the way up to 28. So we're excited about the trajectory. We're hoping that by, again, reducing the size of the awards, making more of them, we might even be able to get to 28 to 30 next year. So that's sort of the goal, is to recruit more people. Yes.
Question, on your last slide,
Yes.
says that 3 REIs were declining. Those are large awards. Do we?
They are.
Is there just, they changed their mind, or?
Yes, these recruitment awards that we make, they're always done before the deal is finalized. And so especially with the established investigators, when it comes that last minute where they actually have to leave, that's when it's the most emotional and the hardest time, because they've got friends and family there, and it's their hardest. That they may be really attracted to this offer, the great institutions here in Texas, but it may be hard to leave New York City or LA at the last minute. And so we have some declines, and that's just going to happen.
Do you find that the current institutions that they would be leaving or leveraging to,
Yes.
is there a game going on here?
Absolutely. So this is always going to be the case. And in many cases, our really large offers will be matched. They won't be fully matched by the home institution, but sometimes, even a 30% offer will be enough to keep them. Because they don't really want to move at the end of the day. It's disruptive but usually they're really tempted by these CPRIT offers. These are big offers. And but yeah, at the last minute, the institutions might come up with a donor who'll make a big gift, and it's always going to happen. And it's just part of the game, is that it will be leveraged, and will be leveraged against other institutions that the person might be interested in moving to. It's just, but I think in general, our offers are going to be larger dollar amounts than anybody else offers, but sometimes that's not enough. So yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? All right. Well, all right. So I'm going to show you a couple of really super busy slides, and these are the last two, but I think there's a tremendous amount of information here, and we'll share the slides, of course. But this gives you an idea of all the grants that were applied for this year and those that were recommended by the SRC. And we were able to fund most of these that were recommended by the SRC. And these are not recruitment grants, but these are the other grants. So you'll see that we had 515 individual research awards. We were able to fund almost 10% of those. So that's terrific, because it's actually a few more awards than we did last year. We increased the number of pilots that we funded by almost 10. So that's terrific. And just if I go back to show you what we had in 2025, you'll see we went from 346 individual research awards, the IIRA totals. And last year we were at 515. This year we're at 620 applicants. So that's the progression of the number of grants that we're seeing. And if I go back to last year, you see the 506 total applications. We were able to fund, 83 were recommended by the SRC, 675 this year. We had 100 recommended, and we were able to fund in the 90s of those. So we did pretty well. We're hopeful that we can adjust things, move the money around. And I should say that we did have to shorten some awards to be able to get to that number. So we've done all types of gymnastics, accounting that we can to fund as many people. And I think that's one of the things that has actually been rewarding, because we've been able to fund more people. And in this case, it was really important because we were able to fund 7 of the 8 research training awards by shortening the applications and reducing the amounts. So kept that going.
If I may,
Yes.
Yes.
we reduced the maximum amount for established investigator from 6 million to 4 million. In your mind, has that hurt in any aspect of our recruiting?
I've asked that question directly from the institutions, and I think in every in the instances where it was sort of perhaps could have been an issue, the institutions have been able to increase their contribution, which is what I had hoped would happen. And so they didn't feel like, even in those that have withdrawn, they didn't feel like it was the dollars were the problem. They thought it was just more family issues and maybe that last emotional hurdle from leaving, their family and friends.
I would guess that the increase in approvals, the number recommended by the SRC, which went from 80 something to 100, is in part a result of reducing the dollar amount for established investigators so that those dollars can then be spread to other areas.
Absolutely correct. Yes. And then the research training awards, we shortened them, which some of those though that didn't have perfect scores. And that allowed us that's fewer dollars this year, which means we'll push those dollars out a couple of years. They'll come back in 3 years for a competitive renewal. And so we're just trying to fund as many people as we can right now. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Rosenfeld.
Yes.
Just a quick point. First of all, the established investigators, those are some outstanding people.
Fabulous.
Just will really benefit Texas.
Yes.
The other is, what's the time sequence after the Oversight Committee approves an investigator? How long does it take before they get the final offer, if you will, and then have to make a decision?
We typically give the institutions some hint that things are moving forward based on the scientific review committee score. So we'll give them a hint that things are looking good, obviously depending on the oversight. After today, we'll send emails. If they're not watching the meeting right now, we'll let them know today. And so the final offer is essentially made. Now, a recruitment is never final until the person shows up at the door. So that's the lag time. And that's where we can get caught, because they may accept the award, but it's not done until they're here. So there is naturally a lag. And so that's the nervous part for me is waiting to see, first and foremost, the acceptance. And sometimes the acceptances come very quickly, and sometimes we give them up to 60 days to accept the award. Yes. Yes.
I'll just add some history to this. I think you guys all know, of course, we do not tell anyone about the proposed awards that come, first from the review council and then to the program integration committee. We don't notify the press offices of universities ahead of time and anything like that, because all of it depends on oversight committee approval. Several years ago, we came to the oversight committee and said, we need to make a slight exception when it comes to the recruits, just because of timing. And so, as Dr. Hebert mentioned, if the review council recommends that we fund it, we let the university know so that they understand that it's moving forward. Of course, we have the caveat, and it plays out sometimes, that if we don't have funding, or if for whatever reason the oversight committee does not approve it, this is not a guarantee that just because the review council, but that was the issue where we had the universities come back to us and say, this is hard for us, with the timing with the quarterly oversight committee meetings, when when we're really competing for somebody. We want to make sure that they know that, they've got this offer in place. So that's just kind of, fill in the history on that.
Yes.
Scott, just one other quick question. Does CPRIT ever get a call from an investigator and say, I would like to be recruited to Texas?
I wouldn't say that happens in those terms per se, but we are occasionally contacted by the investigator asking, what's happened with their application. And we, of course, just refer them to the institution because it's not really. But if I get a communication waiver, I'm always happy to jump on a call and try and recruit. So I'm happy to help the institutions recruit. And and I do think that's, and the reason I'm so happy to do that is I want to tell these recruits, not only because the recruitment award's terrific, But what I want to talk about is all the other awards that they're able to get once they're here in Texas. They can apply for the IRAs, they can apply for training awards, they can apply for core facility awards. There's, I mean, we're, you know, it's a unique opportunity for them. So even though, you know, the recruitment award's big and they probably don't need to apply for other awards right away, I feel like they don't know about the rest of CPRIT. And I'm happy to get a communication waiver and then call them and tell them about all of the other awards and even product development, of course, because they could spin off companies and we would love that. So, yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Scott, you said we have 60 days roughly to accept, and then Kristen said sometimes they come to us and they say we can't do it. Do we have the discretion to extend that
We
period
do.
to work with them?
We do, but the reason that we have the 60-day limit is really to try and get the person to make a decision. It is very hard. It is very hard. And by giving them a deadline, I think it really helps the institutions. Because then the institutions can use our deadline and say, look, you guys have to, you got to make a decision. And that's useful. So.
And it allows us to redeploy our money, you
Right.
know, if they're not going to come, we need to know,
Yeah.
because then we can continue to fund, you know, just like Scott said, to be able to come to the August meeting and be able to fund 12 recruits is because, you know, we hear back from the institutions when somebody says no, and then we can, you know, have that money available for scholars.
Scott, I'll just tell you from personal experience, you don't lose the rookie title.
I was a little, I guess let's say I'm no longer a freshman, I'm a sophomore. Any other questions? If not, I'll wrap up the presentation.
Okay, you have more slides?
No,
Did you say you're
that's it.
finished? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hebert. Mr. Burgess has certified compliance for the Academic Research Award process. It is my understanding that no Oversight Committee member reported a conflict with any of the proposed awards. Members, you have the list of applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC for the Academic Research Grant Awards. We will approve the PIC's recommendation if 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members present and voting agree. There are 12 academic research grant recommendations that we will consider in one motion. If a member wants to consider one or more award recommendations separately from the vote on all the slates, please make a motion to do so now. I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's 12 recommendations for the following 2 academic research grant award mechanisms: recruitment of established investigators and recruitment of first-time tenure-track faculty members.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing approval from at least 2/3 of the members present and able to vote, the motion carries. I will entertain a motion delegating contract negotiation authority to the CEO and CPRIT staff and to authorize the CEO to sign the contracts on behalf of CPRIT.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 8, the chair recognizes Dr. Clayton and Dr. Smith to introduce the product development grant award recommendations. Dr. Clayton will also provide the product development program update. Good morning and welcome. And I assume that Dr. Smith is the happiest person to know that you are here.
Oh, I just wanted to come up here and see your smiling faces one more time.
We're so happy to have you, but probably not as happy as Ken.
Yeah, he's thrilled to be here. Glad Ken is staying, but a tough act to follow. So, but looking forward to it. Again, not as much as Ken, but it's great to see you all this morning. Wonderful to meet all of you, and really excited to share recommendations this morning for some additional awards, as well as a brief update on our fiscal year 27 review process. So the slides come up. So as you know, we've had essentially two tranches of awards this year, initially in November, as well as in May with the supplemental awards, as well as the deferred application award. After all that was done, after the funds were deployed, in addition to the Crossbridge Bio declining their award, we were left with about $4.6 million left. Looking at the companies, both from the 26-1 cycle and 26-2 deferred cycles, there were two companies that, based on the score as well as the funds available to award, that we're able to recommend. There's a seed company, Music Bio, which will recommend funding for about 2.6 million, as well as Pulmatech, which is a previous CPRIT awardee. And they submitted a supplemental that was deferred of $2 million, totaling just under 4.6 million for the remaining funds that we have this fiscal year. Just briefly breaking down the priorities of each of these, obviously Pulmatech is very aware, and the new seed company is, meets many, if not all of the priorities for us as we look to this year. Briefly on both of the companies, Music was as a deferred initial applicant from 26.1 cycle. They're based out of Dallas, UT Southwestern, with a proposed budget of 2.6 million. They have a novel ultrasound guided therapy that they'll use to deliver sting agonist, basically an immune stimulating therapeutic with an ultrasound technique and a targeted microbubble delivery platform. Initially, they'll be pursuing metastatic triple negative breast cancer, and these funds as a seed award will go to IND enabling studies, early R&D, regulatory, really laying the foundation of the company as it spins out from UT Southwestern. The second recommendation we have is for Pulmatech. As you all may be aware, Pulmatech is a previous CPRIT awardee. We had reduced their budget previously from previous cycles. They submitted a supplemental to support continuing their clinical trials, ramping up more clinical trial sites, increasing enrollment, so they can continue their study of PUL 042, which is an immune activating agonist to benefit immunocompromised patients from other respiratory infections. That's it for the grant recommendations. Anything you want to add? Moving on to our review cycle for fiscal year 27. As you all know, we had 207 applications this year, requesting over 1.2 billion in funding. From those companies in preliminary application review, we were able to narrow down and invite 27 applicants to provide a full application. Of those, we received 23 applications, requesting over 180 million in funding. We will start our peer review meetings the end of this week. They'll continue through into the second week in September. And then following that, we'll have our due diligence meetings to finalize the scores, any questions, meet with all the companies. And then we'll have our recommendations at our next Oversight Committee meeting in November. Just getting a little more granular as far as the numbers. Again, initially 1.2 billion that was requested from 207 applicants. Most of those were from seed applicants, and the numbers are pretty similar from the preliminary applications to the full submitted applications. Almost half are from seed applicants, and then we have, again, the bulk oftentimes for the larger grants and therapeutics, and then a few diagnostic devices and new technology companies. Looking at the geographic distribution, most of those are from Texas, a few from the coastal areas, as you might expect: California, Oregon, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and there was another one in Pennsylvania. And then we did have an international submission that we requested a full application, and they're based in Canada. Throughout Texas, the bulk of these come from Houston, with smaller numbers in Dallas, Fort Worth, as well as Austin. And that's it.
Yes,
You,
Mr. Margo.
You said you invited 27 and only 24?
23.
23, I mean,
Yeah.
why did those four not do it? Because we
Yeah, I was gonna-
simplified everything.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier for them.
What, I just don't understand.
Right, and I was surprised too. So we reached out to each of them. We had one beforehand that reached out to us first and said, we're not sure we can fulfill the Texas criteria by the time we get awarded. So they said they're gonna reapply next year. I thought that a little bit odd. It's like 18 months. I mean, it seems like that could be accomplished. There might have been something else going on, but that's what they told us, and they told us before we actually the deadline. The other three I reached out to, one never responded. In fact, the two emails that I had seemed to be defunct. So I don't know if the company exists anymore or not. It was a seed application. And then the other two, basically, one was kind of a convoluted answer where they had two companies, and somehow a certain thing happened to one company, then they, advanced the other one. And so the way it worked out, the company that actually advanced, they weren't going to spin it off anymore. And so basically that one, they decided not to move forward on. And then the last one, what was the last one? Can't think it off the top of my head now, but they gave us another excuse, and it didn't have to do with Texas criteria. I'm trying to think. I'll get that to you. I can't remember what the fourth one was, but it is an interesting point to raise though, because now in the past, we only had like one company that didn't apply. But when you have a situation where you've got more than like almost 10% or more than 10%, we may have to invite more companies in the future just to make sure that eventuality doesn't happen. That said, 24 is about as many as we can do. So if we invite 28 and all 28 apply, then we've got the problem of being able to have enough panels for that. So it is something we're going to have to deal with. This is the first time it's happened.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yes, ma'am. Just these deferred awards, right? These people are postponed for some period of time. Does that affect their ability to continue to operate? In other words, in the meantime, they were just sitting waiting for us, knowing that the award might or might not be funded, but they're still up and running. I just wonder if that impedes their ability to do business.
Yeah, that's a good point too. And that's why I followed up both with Music Bio and Pulmatech to make sure that they're still making progress. So most of these companies, CPRIT's just one award normally they'll apply for. They'll be applying for SBIRs and other grants. They may be able to scrape together a couple $100,000 and continue operations. Pulmatech actually made quite a bit of progress in terms of their recruiting over the last 6 months. So we're cognizant of that. Some companies may, and like I said, the one it was 6 months basically, and maybe the part of the reason that they didn't apply to a full application is they ceased to exist. So we have to be cognizant of that and follow the progression of these people, especially the ones, like that were awarded in 26-1. Their application was from April of 2025. So it's almost been 16 months. And so, yeah, we reach out and make sure that they're still making progress before we decide to award them anything.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Burgess has certified compliance for the Product Development Research Award process. It is my understanding that no Oversight Committee member reported a conflict with any of the proposed awards. Members, you have the 2 applications and grant amounts recommended by the PIC for the Product Development Research Grant Awards. We will approve the PIC's recommendations if 2/3 of the Oversight Committee members present and voting agree. There are 2 product development research grant recommendations that we will consider together in one vote. If a member wants to consider one or more award recommendations separately, please make a motion to do so now. I will entertain a motion to approve the PIC's recommendations for product development research grant awards to Music Bio and Pulmatech.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing approval from at least 2/3 of the members present and voting, the motion carries. I will entertain a motion delegating contract negotiation authority to the CEO and CPRIT staff and to authorize the CEO to sign the contracts on behalf of CPRIT.
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Members, Ms. Doyle notified the board on August 17 that she seeks authority to disperse grant funds in advance to the 5 companies we have just approved for awards. Are there any questions for Ms. Doyle regarding her request? Pursuant to the General Appropriations Act, Article 9, Section 4.02A, do I have a motion to authorize CPRIT to disperse grant funds via advance payments upon execution of any contract documents related to the grants and the successful completion of tranches to the two companies approved for awards today?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. The chair recognizes Dr. Reckes to provide the prevention program and communications update.
Hello. I'm only 10 months, so I'm still a rookie, but it's wonderful to see all of you today. Our update is behind tab 7. We have some beautiful slides we're excited to share with you today too. Thank you. We're going to do 2 updates now, both prevention and communications. And on the first slide, you'll see just a reminder of what the RFAs are that we have for this cycle. So we have our primary prevention of cancer, our cancer screening, early detection, and then dissemination of CPRIT-funded control interventions. And we have here our key dates for you. So in cycle 1, we released that RFA in February. The application portal was open in March. Those applications came in through June. We are about to do our peer review for those applications that we received, and then we'll do award notification. We'll bring the PIC recommendations back to this committee in November. Our cycle 2 with the same RFAs will open in September, or the RFA will be released in September, and that will happen in the new grants management platform. The application will open on September 16th with applications due in December, with a recommendation back to this committee next May. This is an overview of the applications we received for cycle 1. We received a total of 49 applications exceeding $68 million, which far exceeds the approximately $14 million that we anticipate being able to award through these applications. They are very strong applications aligned to what you've heard earlier this morning. We are seeing more applications every time from really wonderful applications that are coming in. So we're thinking very strategically about what our grant cycle looks like in the future and what those RFAs look like. For cycle 2, it will look similar to cycle 1, and we anticipate we will see many of the same wonderful applications coming in. We will have a time period between the applications being people being notified if they have or have not received the awards, or have received their awards before their next application will be coming in as well. We're very grateful to the Oversight Committee for their time with us in the retreat last time that we met, really helping us think about that FY28 RFA cycle and what our plan should be and what we can do to maximize our dollars and our approach to ensure that we're reaching all Texans with primary prevention and cancer screening early detection projects, really thinking about sustainability. So we met with our Prevention Review Council last June. We met with our Prevention Advisory Committee as well as individual members and conducted a survey with our PAC members in July. This month, we are hosting additional meetings with our PAC members. We provided feedback to our Prevention Subcommittee. We're summarizing results as they come in August from our peer review panels to, again, really look at our RFAs and see what our opportunities are. We'll meet back with our PRC and our PAC. We're going to conduct outreach with at least 2 funding agencies to see opportunities for alignment with other groups that are interested in prevention. We'll meet again with our PAC. We'll meet with grantees at our CPRIT conference, and then develop our final recommendations for our FY28 RFAs and present them first to the Prevention Subcommittee, and then, of course, hear and then notify the community about what our plans are, not this year, but the prior grant cycle, we had one grant cycle. And we heard a lot of feedback after that, that the sooner we can tell people about our plans for our RFAs, the better. So that is our plan for this FY28 cycle as well too. So that's just a brief overview of the prevention program and where we are moving with our FY28 and what we received in FY27. And I'll keep going with the communications update if that's okay.
Yes.
Perfect. So wanted to just do a highlight for you here on some things that we've been doing on the communications program. We made a transition from one system into another. So hopefully you're receiving new and improved daily clips from us in a new system. Hopefully you like those. And then we've also been really focusing on our LinkedIn approach and trying to attract more followers. That really kicked in March and April with our listening tour, our tour of Texas. And you can see we did see a pretty big uptake in our number of new LinkedIn followers. So we're tracking that closely. We are now getting above the industry standards within those months of what we were looking for LinkedIn growth. If you're not already following us, we would love for you to do that, repost, share. If you have interesting things for us to share, please let us know. We'd love to talk about that on our channels as well. And you can see on the bottom here our 4 most liked posts on LinkedIn during this year. And you can see that the Oversight Committee itself is often a big one.
We are very popular.
Very popular. Yes. And we're excited to see some new information too. We do anticipate that people are keeping an eye out for when funding is being awarded. We anticipate them going to our social media pages during those days. But excited to see some traffic on other topics as well too. Excited to have Patrick join the team and bring some enthusiasm with us as well too. So that's something we're going to continue to work on and build and making sure that we're telling the wonderful stories of the fabulous grantees and the excellent work that goes on at CPRIT. And that's just one channel that we're using to do that. So wanted to show you a little bit of growth in one of those areas we've been concentrating on our communications team. Of course, we've been closely working with everyone on the communications about the grants management platform, as well as the conference, as those are 2 major initiatives for the institution as well. Those are all of my updates for today.
Are there any questions for Dr. Rekas over the prevention program or the communications update? Yes, Dr. Rosenfeld.
Ruth, just wanted to know, with your popularity on LinkedIn, are you now considered an influencer?
I don't know. We'll have to get CPRIT to that place where we're an influencer. Certainly, we are influencing the conversation around cancer prevention and research.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Ms. Doyle to present her appointments to the Scientific Research and Prevention Program Committees, as well as the fiscal year 2027 honoraria policy.
Members, I know that you all reviewed closely all of the CVs and bios for the 78 appointments that we have to the Scientific Research and Peer and Prevention Program committees. And you know that is the technical name that is in our statute that refers to the peer review committees for all of our programs. So we have 78 appointments listed. I also wanted to know, you do not have to take action on this, but just for your information, 2 members that have been longstanding peer review members of the prevention review cycles will be members of now the Prevention Review Council. And that is because Dr. Wyatt, who has served as our chair of the Prevention Review Council for 13 years, will roll off. He's going to retire and will roll off in December. So Dr. Marcus Plesha and Dr. Rima Afifi will be new members of the Prevention Review Council. So like I said, since you've already approved them as peer review members many meetings ago, there's no action on that, but just to update you. So that is the 78 members. If I'm happy to answer any questions, but if there are no questions, I'll turn to our fiscal year 2027 honoraria policy This is one of those things that we do in August at our last meeting as we approve the honorary policy for the next fiscal year. In terms of the fiscal year 2027 honorary policy, there's no changes in terms of the amount of money that we are paying for honoraria. There is one substantive change. We have added term limits, 4-year term limits for review council membership. Of course, we have included exceptions to those term limits, but it helps in terms of bringing in fresh perspectives and, and having all of our programs work with their review council members to, bring in kind of new peer reviewers to us. So that is the one change that has been made to the fiscal year 2027. I mean, there've been other just kind of wordsmithing changes, but non-substantive. So those are the two issues that I needed to present under this item.
Are there any questions for Ms. Doyle over the appointments or the honoraria policy? Is there a motion to approve the CEO's 78 appointments to the Scientific and Prevention Program Committees? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 2027 honoraria policy?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Turning to agenda item 11, I recognize Ms. Doyle to present the presiding officer's new appointments to the Advisory Committee on Artificial Intelligence, Clinical Trials Advisory Committee, and the Product Development Advisory Committee.
Members, I have 13 advisory committee appointments. Many of these are they're the inaugural members for the Advisory Committee on Artificial Intelligence. And then we also have a new member for the Clinical Trials Advisory Committee and a new member for the Product Development Advisory Committee.
Are there any questions for Ms. Doyle? Members, is there a motion to approve the 13 appointments to the Advisory Committee on Artificial Intelligence, the Clinical Trials Advisory Committee, and the Product Development Advisory Committee?
So moved.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The chair now recognizes Dr. Scott Hebert. Dr. Hebert will introduce Dr. Thomas E. Hudson to present the Clinical Trials Advisory Committee report.
Thank you. I especially want to begin my introduction by just thanking Dr. Hudson for taking over the chair of this advisory committee, which he agreed to do in April. We maybe didn't tell him he had to come here and present every year when we nominated him, but he was graciously accepted, and we really appreciate.
And I am the new member.
But he's kind of the perfect person to lead this committee because he spent quite a lot of time at Baylor. So he has deep experience, in Houston, went to Texas Tech for a couple of years. So he has really great experience in the Panhandle, and now has moved to Texas Oncology. So he has some private practice experience in Abilene. And so he's a unique individual in this term. So I think he's a perfect person to chair this committee, and really, really appreciate him coming today to make this presentation. Thank you, Tom.
Well, thank you. You're my comfort. You're like my safety blanket.
I'm happy
My
to stay if
safety
you'd
blanket.
like.
Okay, yes, that's fine. And this is the way you advance it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you all. It's an honor to be here, and I'm happy to bring the heat from West Texas to Central Texas. It's nice. It's gonna be nice and warm today. My career and my life has been as a clinical trialist, so it's an honor to be here and to ensure that the mission that has been given to CPRIT by the state to ensure that access to clinical trials happens in all geographies of the state is important to us all and to me. So today we're going to talk a little bit about new members, which is me. So I think we've done well there. We're going to talk about clinical trial enrollment and provide updates to our CPRIT initiatives, the Rural Oncology Trials Accelerator Award, the Recruitment and Retention Clinical Trialist Award, Clinical Investigator Award, and Trial Network Award. And then the fiscal year 2020 cycle 2 RFAs that have been released or will be released. And then we do have a new initiative, which is our innovation conference. And so I want to highlight that to you all and encourage you all to be there, and then review what the great accomplishments. I've joined a committee which has done great things and has had great leadership. And then talk a little bit about where we want to go in 2027. So this is the way our committee looks. You can see me there. It's representative of, I think, a large, vast experience of various investigators from the clinical side, translational and academia population. And we want to expand that even further. We want to include members that represent all types of stakeholders that would be involved in clinical trials. So that I think that will give us the best opportunity to make sure that we are reaching our goals of delivering clinical trial access outside of the metropolitan areas, even into rural Texas, which has been a challenge, I think, not only in this state, but in states around the country. We're in the process of securing representation from Upper Rio Grande to El Paso area. And one of the goals for us was to meet at least once in person. And you can see this was the nice crew that made it down all the way to what I was told was the most southern point of Texas, which is in McAllen, Texas, to the Rio Grande Valley. And we had a wonderful time looking at that brand new facility, that brand new medical school, which has so much potential there. And so we really want to help partner with them and make sure as they develop their clinical cancer program there that we walk beside them and their investigators and make sure that they have the ability to apply for various funding mechanisms to get and retain faculty, as well as participate in clinical trials. So CPRIT supported clinical trial enrollment to date is shown here. I mean, you can't, the numbers speak for themselves. So, when we talk about clinical trials, we talk about both interventional trials, which is what I think most of the public commonly thinks when they think of a clinical trial in cancer, is you get a therapy, you get a new therapy. So those would be the traditional types of phase 1 through 3 clinical trials. And then observational studies, which are sometimes as important, but we tend to neglect them a lot, where we try to learn more about something, and they don't necessarily require an actual drug being given to or an intervention being given to a patient. You can see
Dr. Hudson, on this chart, sorry to interrupt you,
Yes.
but can you give us some comparison here with either other geographical areas or other institutionals or something like that to help us understand the number 70,000 patient enrolled to date? How does that compare according to
Okay.
other metrics?
Happy to share with that. So when I look at, let me just speak of Texas Oncology. So we recognize Texas Oncology is the largest cancer care provider as a private practice group in the United States, really, but in the state of Texas for sure. They've roughly have put on over their duration of their existence, 20,000 patients. So in 35 years, 20,000 patients. So our enrollment here from CPRIT is 70,000, and CPRIT has not been around for 35 years. So I think, and that is increasing. And so, naturally the enrollment is coming from a lot of academic institutions and kind of major hospitals. And I think one of the goals of at least my joining the committee, and one of the things we hope to accomplish, I'm stealing from my last slide, is we want to understand better how to get into the rural counties. I think we owe it to rural America of finding access to clinical trials. And this concept of just having it be at an academic center 300 miles away doesn't help enrollment in West Texas. So I think those are great numbers. I hope that helps.
And I might just add that if you're looking at other states, the answer would be, for instance, in Tennessee, where I came from, the number of state-funded clinical trials, 0. So this is a phenomenal number. Yeah.
And you all recognize how unique CPRIT is. Even before I heard of CPRIT back years ago when it was first being formed, I heard all of my colleagues from other states saying they wanted to move to Texas, that this was unfair, that we had this. Okay. So 2026 CEAS reported mechanisms to further enhance access to clinical trials. One of them was the Rural Oncology Trial Accelerator Award shown there. It was posted on August 5th, 2025. Applications were received up through December 2nd. award notification was in May and anticipated start was June 1st, 2026. Then the recruitment or retention of clinical trial award was posted August 5th. Applications through May 20th of 2026 with potential award dates anytime soon. We don't have a exact date, but so for CPRIT supported mechanisms to further enhance access to clinical trials, the gaps that we fill here is obviously this role. It's blocked by our pictures here, but it's really providing access to these areas in Texas which have minimal clinical trial enrollment. And as you know, the regulatory agencies in the United States have certainly recognized that the vast majority of clinical trial participation is not happening in the patients that really represent the bulk of where cancer is, which is in the communities, right? That you can't make decisions on clinical trials based upon patients enrolled in just a couple centers in the United States. So I think these mechanisms that we are trying to support here are geared to try to improve upon that and encourage oncology clinical trial access and mechanisms by which academic institutions and others can utilize these funds to start outreaching into some of these rural communities. And then, retention of folks like me as clinical trialists. It wasn't long ago. Certainly I left, I trained at Cleveland Clinic in 2003 when I left and moved to Texas. Back then clinical trialists were not really recognized as equivalents in academia as a traditional translational scientist was. And I think we're coming a long way. And I think many of us, they're starting to realize, hey, that we can be just as scientific. And, the way you actually get a drug to market is actually through a clinical trial. So the Rural Oncology Trials Accelerator Award seeks to establish or enhance clinical trial capacity in rural and underserved communities. The award amount is up to $900,000. We solicit applications from institutions, and the award duration is for up to 3 years. The other information about the award is shown there in bulleted points. There has been various PIs that have received these awards. It's again, some of it's covered up there, but hopefully you can see it in your handout. We have West Texas Oncology Site Network Award, and this is from University Medical Center of El Paso, receiving $900,000. The University of Texas Health Science Center at Tyler Oncology Clinical Research Program was to outreach into rural East Texas, and they received just under $900,000. Starr County Oncology Trial Accelerator Award was for $635,000+ for Health Institute and Research Development. And Advancing Oncology Clinical Trial Infrastructure in Rural Underserved Communities of Texas was Texas A&M's submission, and that was funded fully at $900,000. And then the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, Diane Nguyen, who is their, I believe now is taken on as the division chief role, there is received just under $900,000. So if we move into the other award, the Recruitment or Retention of Clinical Trialist Award, this was applications again submitted from institutions. This was again to recruit folks that are well-educated in conduct of clinical trials into the rural areas that would then allow there to be comfort by industry, which we are still industry dominated in clinical trial development and drug development, for them to feel like, hey, I can launch my asset into rural Texas, and the clinical trialist who's in charge of that asset is going to perform well. We're not going to be cited by infractions by FDA, et cetera. And so the award amount, total cost, $2 million for assistant professors, $2.5 million for associate professors, and $3 million for full professors, and the award duration is up to 5 years. We have one person that has been awarded $2 million for 5 years out of Texas Tech. Erin Barr, Dr. Barr is a local principal investigator for all of the Children's Oncology Group trials in Lubbock, and she oversees 29 active phase 2 and 3 studies in the Panhandle of Texas. Quite an amount. She is a pediatric oncologist. So wanted to spotlight the CPRIT Clinical Investigator Award. This supports mid-career clinical scientists. As you may know, some of our professional organizations such as ASCO has published, and I think CPRIT participated in this too, at least some of our members have been authors on this, about how there seems to be a movement of really well-trained academics out of academic institutions mid-career going into private practice and other things because of lack of funding and difficult to fund. And so it's hard for some of our academic institutions and cancer centers to retain, qualified mid-career folks and to provide the ability to do this. This fills in some of the gaps that the NCI has stopped funding, for instance, K-4 mid-career investigator awards. And then the proportion of NIH's early career awards, the K-23s and K-08 recipients, leaving research careers has doubled. Again, that's just numbers to reflect what I just stated. And so this was a award given to Jennifer Wargo from UTMD Anderson, and her project title was Dietary Intervention to Modulate the Microbiome and Immune Response. Very timely kind of research. We also have a Clinical Trials Network Award. All 10 sites, again, held annual webinars for sponsors and contract research organizations with over 100 attendees. This is not the first time you've heard of this award in this network, but it's the inaugural in-person CTNA symposium is scheduled for October 5th. This is the, is this separate from our innovations conference? Or the
Yeah, it'll happen right before the
innovations conference,
so
which to bring
the same
together
site.
the participants in the Clinical Trial Network Award. It's a 5-hour event where all the sites are going to be there to foster hopefully that camaraderie and work together and bring together a clinical trial network that pieces together some of the areas, some of the centers that have not had access. For instance, one of the sites I'm now at in Abilene Hendricks Hospital, for instance, the hospital system in Abilene is part of this clinical trial network that is being sponsored by UT Southwestern. So this is Kaylana Nara. She's from JPS Fort Worth. She's part of the clinical trial network. She was not been involved in clinical trials. Her site did not do them, but now is able to, through this trial network award, to now enroll in clinical trials. And by doing so, she's been able to enroll patients. Figures are doubling, enrolling patients in nationwide pivotal clinical trials. So, and now Dr. Nara is able to publish papers, and she's been nominated actually to an NCI steering committee. So sometimes it just takes this little bit of push, this little bit of access to funds that helps get these investigators that are in centers that have, whether it's a hospital center or small hospital system that doesn't really have the funds to kind of push people into research. These things will help do that. There's a clinical trial participation award. We completed the largest analysis ever conducted of financial support for cancer clinical trials. And this abstract was submitted by CPRIT and the press coverage of the UT Southwestern Clinical Trials Participation Award hit the NBC5 News, where McKinney Mann shares experience of clinical trials. So this is just a call out that we do good here by our patients by getting them access to some therapies that they may not otherwise have. And we need to do that in real time because, you know, our patients need the therapies now and have access to them. So this coverage led to broader awareness of its effort and impact, leading in 2025 to funding from the Brady James Foundation, 56 allowing the site to continue providing financial support for non-medical costs for patients on cancer clinical trials after the CTPA ended. We do have 2 RFAs to open soon. These are cycle 2 RFAs. We have 3 of them shown here. The Clinical Investigator Award, which is an award up to $1.5 million in total costs for a period up to 5 years. This again supporting mid-career clinical scientists with specialty training. The Clinical Trials Network Award. This is up to $2.5 million in total costs for a period up to 5 years and supports applications from institutions, organizations, or physician groups with an established clinical trials infrastructure and clinical trials portfolio to develop and oversee a network for clinical trials. And that's the stage 1 part of it. And then the stage 2 part of it, the lead institution will expand its network to 2 additional facilities located outside its current catchment. There's a lot of confusion as to why we need to do this. Some of it comes down just to the wording of how we can award grants. Certainly some of the access issues could be served by finding a mechanism by which we can get some of the community oncology practices access. And so the hope is that the community oncology practices that serve rural Texas would be able to then partner with one of the academic institutions, which can serve as kind of that lead institution and then partner that way by building a clinical trial program. That's what we're trying to work on and establish more over the next year or 2. And then recruitment or retention of clinical trialist award is total cost up to $2 million for assistant professors, 2.5 for associate professors, and $3 million for professors over a period of 5 years. I got in when someone was asking the question, do people come to Texas? Do people ask to come to Texas? Well, I would hope with this type of package that would make someone a very attractive opportunity to come to Texas. This is a shout out to our CPRIT Innovations Conference, October 5th. The symposium will feature talks and panel discussions directly relevant to the conduct of cancer clinical trials in community settings, as well as time for networking. Again, a first step trying to bridge this gap we have, which is, again, focused on clinical trials at large academic institutions. Okay, we don't need to help them anymore. They're doing well. The focus is how do we bridge out into rural areas and communities which generally have not been able to participate in clinical trials. And having been in West Texas and now living in West Texas, you know, patients can't travel 300 to 500 miles to participate in a clinical trial. So we need to have mechanisms that will allow patients in their own communities to be able to partake in these clinical trial efforts. So the clinical trial working group, you know, is really bringing together all of these entities shown here. And, you know, and the great thing is that people can put their differences beside. Academic institutions working with private practices together is a nice thing to see. And it ain't even Christmas. And so, you know, if we can continue to do this and encourage this and having this lead institution and these partnerships that happen, that's going to be the way we move forward. So what have we accomplished? You know, what am I picking up here? Well, I think all these check marks just show how great this committee has done and met its challenges provided by the oversight and by the legislature. So we're broadening representation to other professional groups, including advanced practice providers, social workers, navigators. We want them to join our committee to help help speak into some of the challenges we're having. And we're including other regions. Again, we're looking for Upper Rio Grande right now. Further refine clinical trial focused RFAs to ensure diverse access enrollment. It seems like with the change of administrations, at least I'm noticing from the government, the US government, there's been seems to be less interest in ensuring diverse access and enrollment as there was potentially in the past. And that has been noted by big pharma. So they actually are less inclined to be so excited to enroll El Paso patient as they were just 4 or 5 years ago. Consider potential new RFAs, community, especially rural. We need medical oncologists that are mentored by experienced investigators and sites. You saw the doctor from JPS in Fort Worth. It just took a little bit of help to get her there. Recruitment of clinical trialists in rural areas and building and expanding clinical infrastructure for Texas Regional Excellence and Cancer TREC eligible institutions. And we're continuing our working group monthly meetings. In fact, we have one this Friday. And then continuing annually to rotate around and hold these annual in-person CTAC meetings. So what are my kind of thoughts and recommendations as we've discussed at our last meeting, what we brainstormed here? We want to develop mechanisms that facilitate delivery of the highest quality of cancer care to all Texans by the engagement of all stakeholders involved in clinical research. And if you were going to critique CPRIT or critique this committee from an outsider coming onto the committee, that would have been the concern over the past few years, that people would say, doesn't seem, the awards don't seem to go to the institutions that really need them. It's the same 2, 3 or so institutions that do. So I see that coming in here and trying to find ways that makes equipoise. And I've learned so much about, sometimes you're limited by the language of legislation. So, you know, it's how do you change that potentially? And so that last bullet point there is one of our ways that we, you know, this was brought up by my, by one of our colleagues on our committee, was to focus on this season of writing a white paper. What does clinical trial access in rural Texas look like? A white paper on that topic that can be then used, that we could use, the committee could use to educate our politicians and folks here in the capitals to understand and maybe help with us in changing policy and funding. But we want to continue to engage with big pharma because we recognize, you know, that is drug development happens still in the United States through big pharma. Work and partner with them in initiatives where they can help us as we bring upon our funds to build infrastructure. They bring upon supporting efforts. Figuring out how to do that, that becomes complicated, right? I think the difficulties in the fine writing of that. It sounds easy on when we speak about it, but getting down to the nitty gritty will be the challenge. Best practices. Can we look at places in Texas now that are enrolling on clinical trials and doing a good job and try to reproduce that and be able to take what we learned from some practices and apply it to other practices. And again, at the end of the day, it's just access to trials. That's what we're here for, is to get access for all, so that zip codes don't define your ability to participate on a clinical trial in the state of Texas. So that's all I got. Thank you.
That's quite a lot. Thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Hudson? Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my gosh.
Dr. Rosenfeld. Oh, Dr. Patel. Yes.
Thank you very much for that brilliant presentation, especially the issue about the white paper. You know, but most of the rural oncology patients are treated by, and correct me if I'm wrong, by private oncology practices. How many are there in the state of Texas, and what's the population that they serve? Would be very important to note, because we need to have the necessary academic sites giving that support, but not necessarily take the patients away because of the distance that patients have to travel, the families that they have to live, the work that they have to provide for their families, amongst other things. Do we have that data?
I don't have it at the tip of my tongue to share those numbers with you, but we can definitely access that data and provide that data to you. What percentage of patients travel to academic centers? I know, having my past tenure at Texas Tech, I know a little bit about Lubbock County, where there's 9,000 new diagnoses per year, and we believe that about half the number of patients stay locally and receive their care from 2 hospital systems. One of them is a private practice hospital system, Covenant. The other is the University Medical Center with Texas Tech. The other half travel outside of Lubbock region to other areas. We believe mostly into the Metroplex or down to Houston to receive higher level of care. So, who's traveling and who's not traveling, a lot of it's based upon the demographics and socioeconomics of the patient and the family. So you're absolutely right that when you start moving down go up to Amarillo, or start going down to the Permian Basin, or even into the big country, Abilene, that is true that most of the care is given by smaller community practices. But if you look at Texas Oncology, for instance, in clinical trials, they, as part of US Oncology and the Sarah Cannon Research Network, which is outside of the state of Texas, performs very, very well and has done well in clinical trials, participating on most of the trials that resulted in most drugs that are approved for use. So you want to be able to find a way to take that knowledge base that exists out how to do clinical trials well in the community setting, and then try to marry it with an academic partner in a way that allows there to be equipoise. And that's the challenges we face. We started having discussions about, really frank discussions at our last meeting, about some of the limitations we have in the way the legislature's written that, so if I pulled someone from Baylor Scott and White Health, or if I pulled someone from Texas Oncology or one of the centers group of blood disorders from Fort Worth, Ray Page's group, and said, hey guys, what do you think about CPRIT? They'll say, I don't think anything about CPRIT. I don't have any access to any money. They don't fund any of our clinic. We can't. We're private practice. We're not a government entity. So it's figuring out how can we find a way that we can really help them get access to funds sometimes that they need to help build out their infrastructure. And that's the challenge, right? So I throw it back at you if you have any thoughts into that, but that's one of our challenges for this year that we're going to look at.
The central point is going to be, as you had mentioned earlier, equity in cancer care, which is going to be the most important thing. I mean, as it is, we don't get rural population into clinical trials, phase 1, 2 clinical trials, and we do need that diversity, because that does make a difference.
That's right. It absolutely does.
Thank you.
Dr. Rosenfeld?
Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you.
I just want to ask questions about challenges to participation, and ask you challenges on the state level and in the bigger picture. So, as someone who runs clinical trials, one of the issues that well is the time it takes to start a clinical trial. You have to, and especially multi-site trials, we have to go through multiple IRBs that have contradictory requests. Then you have contracts that are independent at every place you go to. And it could take you a year or more to start a clinical trial. By the time you start it, the trial's closed. So we're here in Texas and we think of the big picture and we look for answers. So in your role, is there a way we consider a Texas, if you will, Texas-wide IRB? So there's only one IRB you get to approve, and that IRB approves stuff in Galveston and Amarillo and Tyler and Paris. You don't so that's one thing. And the other is a single contract. Especially as you know, some contract negotiations could go on for months and years. So if those two could be statewide and standardized, it would attract clinical trials from all over the United States. And that's a challenge for you.
Yes, I agree.
The
100%.
And the next point, as we sit here in Texas, in the United States, we have to realize that clinical trials are moving to China. That's where pharmas are doing their clinical trials. They could be done much faster for multiple reasons. There's venture companies now that will only invest in companies that will do their trials in China. So as we sit here and talk about clinical trials in the US, our challenge is really, how do we not have all the clinical trials go to China? So I'd like to hear your insights.
Yeah, well, you asked tough questions. So, well, I applaud you for your vast understanding of the topic, and you clearly are pointing to things that are focuses for us. So when it comes down to having a statewide IRB and regulatory, we've talked about and we're exploring the idea of, what would it be like to have a CPRIT funded clinical trial consortium group. Like we do have the Trial Network Award, but even making that even larger. And we've actually had meetings with some groups. There's a group called the Hoosier Oncology Group, which is the HOG, which is well known, and they've done well. They're run out of Indiana, and we've met with them about what that looks like. And we don't want to spend money duplicating things that aren't broken. So the goal is to try to be penny wise a little bit with it. So, but we've had conversations about what that would look like. This idea of being able to go through contracts quickly and a central IRB, I think the limiting factor would be having each of the institutions and governing authorities of the local hospitals and stuff accept that. And there are already examples of national IRBs, like Western IRB, for instance. We use that commonly. I'll tell you that one of the things we've entertained within Texas Oncology and US Oncology had been, and we've done this, and I think it's moving forward a lot more, is we've did this specifically for rare cancers, where we did this thing called just-in-time, the just-in-time model, where you would have central contracting, you would have central budget, and the IRB's already done centrally, use like a Western IRB or whatever. Many times the pharma company has already done a Western IRB. So you just need to get your local authorities, your local hospitals to accept the Western IRB or sign off on it. Some do and some don't. But to have that, and then as you using AI and other tools, as you identify a patient, and so many of our trials now are not cancer specific, they're mutation specific, but as you start identifying these patients through your next gen sequencing and stuff, that you're able to open the trial within 1 to 2 weeks, that you have the mechanisms to train your staff and open the trial where the patient is. So so that's, we've done that at some level successfully within US Oncology for rare tumors. And the goal, and it's more expensive. The pharma likes it because they don't pay extra to open a trial at a site that never accrues, but they pay an extra startup though. So they have to pay high for startup, but it's only going to open at sites that actually have the trial. And so you have this fast mechanism. And so that's, again, something that we're going to talk to. So I think the first step for us was since there's a lot of interest on the committee to have a white paper, we have representation from now all different stakeholders, is to see if we can put down into writing what some of the unique challenges are. We've mentioned some of them: academics, community practice. What are the challenges between public entities and private entities? How do we handle that? And access to care issues that you brought up, and how do we put that down in writing that we can then start educating but I think it's going to take a change a little bit, probably in the way some of our oversight language is written. But we will definitely share with you for feedback, obviously, as we're putting this together.
I might add that, the cooperative groups do pretty well with this, and maybe Thomas could comment. And it's sort of with a cooperative group, you're going to have one contract, but they tend to be more phase 2, phase 3 trials, where institutions really have a hard time getting a single contract is when you're talking about phase 1 trials, where the complexity might be really different, and the different business models in the different hospitals are just makes a single contract almost impossible. But perhaps in the phase 2, phase 3 setting, we could do this. So
I would say that there are some sites that really want to do phase 1 studies, and some sites that have no interest in participating in phase 1 studies. And you could take those sites that have shown the expertise and the interest, and I think put them under a single contract. No matter how hard the institutions say, we have to be independent, we have to be this, we have to be that. What they have to do is do good patient care. And you didn't comment on China. If you want to pass on that, I understand.
No, I mean, I just think that we are blessed in our country, we're blessed in our state to have access of all therapies, and every trial is just we don't have enough patients to enroll on every single trial that needs to be done. So pharma has to go, and sometimes they do go to and that's burned them before. I know trial situations where, for instance, in Russia, they've gone and put most of the patients, and that resulted in a drug not being approved because of issues you can't control, you can't regulate, you can't oversee quality concerns. So I think it's a big issue, and I think we were going the right direction, and hopefully we'll get back there where we say for drugs in the United States that we need to make sure that they've been studied in the patient population in which we're targeting, which, as we said, needs to be more than just a Caucasian male, which dominates clinical trial enrollment is a Caucasian male and female patient. We need to go to all the races and geographies in Texas. And so we're going to try.
Mr. Taylor? Dr. Patel?
Just as a follow-up, in the children's oncology group, we have a central IRB. Initially, there was resistance for a month or 2 months because all the local physicians, as members of COG, went to the institutions and said, this is the way it's going to be. And so in the children's oncology group, we have a central IRB. Protocols passed, phase 1, 2, and 3 protocols passed very rapidly. There is no real oversight by the local IRB, so we don't waste a lot of time implementing the trials. And the second thing is that 98% of our children less than 16 years of age in the United States who have cancer are on COG protocols, and rapidly also. So you do have a phenomenal example of how a central IRB works, albeit in the pediatric population, we only get 17 to 18,000 new cases compared to 1.2 million in adults per year. But still, it does work.
So I guess my challenge to you all, it sounds like you all would be very interested to hear what we kind of brainstorm and are willing to think outside the box a little bit on how we can partner together with all stakeholders and try to get clinical trials to rural areas. But it's thinking outside the box a little bit, I think.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
with us. The chair now recognizes Dr. Patrick Clayton to introduce Mr. Andrew Strong and Dr. Michelle Park, who will provide the Product Development Advisory Committee report.
Thank you and good morning again. It is my extreme pleasure to introduce Andrew Strong and Dr. Michelle Park today to give our Product Development Advisory Committee update. I believe you all know Andrew and Michelle well, so I won't go deep into their bios. It's also available in your folder, but we'll take a second just to say thank you to both of y'all for all of your work that you've done for CPRIT, for your time today, and all the insights that you're able to provide and benefit CPRIT as well as Texas.
Great. Thank you so much. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge Ken, who has done an amazing job as the product development officer. And I, can say that I've worked with him over the past several years, and I know that he's done a wonderful job in transforming and really kind of improving. If you remember 5 or 6 years ago, the product development program was not making many awards, and he really turned it around. So my only regret is you didn't roast him enough when he was up here for his presentation. So, but anyway, so you've heard from us before. We're going to kind of do what we've done in past sessions where we presented the PDAC report. First of all, we'll go into more detail on the committee, but this is the members of the committee. We have some new members that have come on board. Casey Cunningham with Sante Ventures and his associate, Alana Horowitz. They're already helping immensely. Jim Barlow, who's the president CEO of Immunogenesis, which is a CPRIT awardee, is on the committee, as well as John Oates, who has replaced Victoria Ford at THBI. So why don't we go to the next slide, and I think we'll turn it over to, oh, I'm supposed to do that. Thank you. I got it. So we'll start kind of with Michelle. And if you know Michelle, just as background, she is a partner with NEA, which is one of the top VC investing firms in the country in biotech and life sciences. And so she really does have kind of a bird's eye view of what's going on at a macro level in the ecosystem and kind of where the money is going. So Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Andrew. Thank you, Patrick. And it is a privilege to be able to present today. I guess I'll just start off by saying I'm happy to report a very different market overview from last year. Biotech is no longer in a dark place, as we've seen a clear rebound in biopharma relative to last year. And so just, quick snapshot, the XBI, the biotech index, continues to outperform the broader indices. And year to date, I think this was as of a week and a half ago, maybe, we're up 21%. I think that number's actually gone up versus the gains in the single digits of the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. We'll go to the next slide. Let's see. Yeah. It appears that we're finally emerging from the downturn with a cycle upswing since late 2025. And what this implies is a resurgence of risk on investment by VCs in the first half of 2026. There has been an increased investment pace, which has been extremely productive, and more early stage risk taking, importantly. There's an opening IPO window, and there's been strong M&A by deal count as well as deal value, reopening clearer paths to exit for companies and investors. And investor sentiment has definitely improved because of this. It's a healthy sector, and every subsector within healthcare, biopharma, diagnostics and tools, devices, health tech is on pace for more investment this year than in 2025. And of course, I can't do a presentation these days without at least a single mention of AI. So the growing investment dollars as prevalence of AI brings in new investors has definitely been increasing from both VC as well as tech corporate groups. In the next slide, there's definitely a strong trend towards an upcycle. Venture privates, the market volume in 2026 is up 38% versus 2025, tracking for the second strongest year in history for venture stage privates in biopharma since 2021. So there's definitely a renewed appetite for risk and a clear shift back towards the traditional size, the smaller VC rounds, with smaller numbers of investors, with larger investor ownership versus the mega rounds that we were seeing late last year. The early stage first financing remains difficult, but the barbell investment thesis continues to support early stage companies, as well as the momentum-driven later stage mega rounds. So investors are constructive about healthcare and trending again gradually towards earlier stage projects. And this would be to put investment dollars to work. We're consistently seeking strong science, strong data, and strong brain power. On the next slide, just to speak to the spike in M&A activity, we're seeing it with large deal values. So there was more venture-backed M&A activity year to date than in any full year since 2020. And this is driven by the looming patent cliffs that Big Pharma is facing over the next 7 years, newly buoyant public markets, and Big Pharma's race to bolster their internal pipelines. If this current pace holds up, the industry could hit greater than $250 billion in deal value, marking the strongest year for biotech as well as pharma M&A since the peak of 2019. And importantly, as it relates and as it is relevant for us, oncology continues to be the leading therapeutic category for biopharma M&A. And speaking on the next slide, to the scope of innovation and opportunity in advancing cancer treatments, oncology continues to lead biopharma deals by value as well as volume. So we're remaining the top indication in the first half of 2026 by deal count, as well as by deal value. And then the next slide, the capital markets in the biopharma sector remain robust. They're looking very robust. We're tracking the second strongest financing year in history. The total global financing across VC, IPOs, follow-ons, and private debt are tracking at an annualized run rate of $171 billion, only trailing $199 billion that was raised in 2021. The IPO markets are very active, 15 IPOs, and this actually needs to be updated. It's probably closer to 18 or 19 now, raising well over $15 billion year to date. And this compares to just 4, raising $700 million over the same period last year. So this IPO market is tracking to be the third strongest in history, next to 2021 and 2020. So the backlog continues to build. We're on pace for at least 20 IPOs total by summer's end. And the performance has been solid. Most of the aftermarket performance has been very strong. And reverse mergers and de-SPACs are increasingly being used in alternative routes to public markets, with 18 announced year to date, raising over $4 billion in PIPE proceeds. And in the final slide here, just with respect to the market overview, we're seeing a continued demand for oncology investments. Early stage activity remains hot. 19 preclinical or phase 1 private VC-backed M&A over the last 18 months. Selective early stage bets on novel mechanisms. For example, Novartis's $1.5 billion acquisition of Murix for ADC candidates with a novel NMTI payload technology has been a great example of a transformative early technology that is being rewarded with a transaction from the M&A side. The biotech values, based on the average enterprise value of the US public biotechs, is up, mostly in precision oncology relative to other therapeutic categories. So just in summary, the improving macro conditions, the stable policy backdrop with pace of FDA drug approvals in line with prior years, the anticipation of more M&A, and the explosive pace of innovation, this all continues to present a unique opportunity for CPRIT funding of potentially transformative translational projects. And I'll hand it back over to Andrew.
Great. Before we leave this segment, does anybody have any questions for Michelle that you'd like to ask? All right. Okay, so we'll jump into the PDAC report, and this kind of drills down more into what's going on in Texas and also within the product development program. As Michelle mentioned, about a year ago, market conditions were, when we met, we reviewed the market conditions. It wasn't nearly as rosy as we're seeing today. We heard from a CPRIT awardee, March Bio, and we reviewed some of the statistics like tongue twister, from application to award. At that point, it was a tough market. CPRIT was still a beacon of hope, and it still is today, which is great. It was driving a considerable number of applications into the RFA process. And now 1 year later, the market is doing better. We're seeing more Texas-based companies and companies moving to Texas that are in the biotech space in both, therapeutics, devices, diagnostics, and now we kind of have this burgeoning area of AI, which is another name for bioinformatics, which people have been doing for quite a bit of time, but we just have better tools. In terms of companies that are starting out of Texas, it's still tough. The market is challenging. Unless you are in that space where the money is going, it's hard to raise capital. And the typical stage for an early company that's preclinical is to, form the company, bring technology into the company, and then raise enough money to get to an inflection point. And so we refer to the valley of death, and that valley of death is still real. That valley of death really is the point in time where you have gotten to a proof of concept where you've raised enough money to demonstrate to the big investors, like the venture capital investors or the larger funds, that this is something that they should invest in. And so that gap grows. So you have to raise more early money through family offices, smaller VC funds, non-dilutive funding such as CPRIT, SBIRs or SCTRs, and be able to kind of bridge that valley so that you can develop enough data that will be attractive to the larger investors. And so that's still an issue, and it's still challenging for many companies. We are seeing companies kind of get that escape velocity and be able to raise the big dollars, but you don't see it that often. Frankly, it's very difficult. CPRIT is still very, very important to help fill that valley of death. And, kind of when I say that the valley is growing, what I mean by is that a lot of the VCs that will invest, in a $40 million round, they want to see clinical data. They want to see, objective response rates and 30% or more. That will turn the interest towards the company and allow them to go syndicate a raise. And so it's still kind of raise money by all means possible for these early companies, many of which are CPRIT awardees. And so, as the PDAC, that's really one thing that we have been thinking about, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is how does CPRIT or does the Texas ecosystem, come alongside these companies that are still quite early and help them raise enough capital to get to the point where they can attract the larger dollars to make it to the next stage. I mean, we did have one shining success earlier this year with Crossbridge Bio being acquired by Lilly. And, that is a huge testament to CPRIT, because CPRIT wasn't, gave it an award early. It enabled it to raise more money and to create data that would be attractive. Now, the one question is, if people are following all the news on all the acquisitions, Lilly has been on a buying spree. And I wonder, we can ask Michelle later, how much of those numbers that we saw on the M&A activity are driven just by that one company, Eli Lilly, which is, has a ton of cash because of all of its GLP-1 sales. But we're not complaining, are we? Because Crossbridge was a great example and would not have been where it is without CPRIT. And it's homegrown. It came out of the University of Houston Health Science Center. Yeah, just to kind of go to our initial findings. So the main grant cycle, so CPRIT kind of has, the PD program has now gravitated towards a single main grant cycle. And of years past, you may remember we would have two, one in the fall, one in the spring. And, it was a little choppy, but now everybody knows and they understand the process, that there's a preliminary application. That preliminary application gets shortlisted down to, about 10% of those preliminary applications, or 10 to 15%, depending on which year, go to a full application. And it's a good process. It's been working well. The supplemental cycle is also, I think, being very well received, which is really targeted to the existing CPRIT companies. And so you can see the numbers up here in terms of what's worked, but it is really, from our perspective as the PDAC, it gives predictability in the process. And that's important. There's one main cycle. If you want to get on that main cycle, you got to start getting ready for it, because it's going to open up in April, and you've got to move quickly to submit your preliminary. So I think the company side of the applicant side, they understand that process and they appreciate it. Would they like to have more cycles? Of course, but this works well. Some of the emerging observations, and some of these are just happen because of the facts of that particular cycle. Last year, there were a number of companies that were brought into diligence and made it through diligence and were recommended for funding, but couldn't be funded. Thankfully, like MusicQ, which is one of the ones that got funded today, was one of those that was put in kind of the deferred category. That is challenging for the company, because if you think that they applied in April of 2025, and now, over a year later in August of 2026, they're getting their grant. So, most, when you're raising capital, you don't anticipate you're going to just take 16 months to get that capital in the door. Sometimes it takes that amount of time. So I'd rather have that problem than kind of where we were, 6 or 7 years ago, where we're only funding one or two companies in a cycle. But I think that may be more fact-driven, and Ken obviously knows a lot more about that. But from kind of the outside perspective, we would prefer that all those companies that get, recommended for approval can be funded in that cycle. And so I know that Patrick and Ken and the team are going to be focused on that. And then there's kind of this issue that continues to percolate over the years, where we make an award to a company and that company is unable to raise the matching funds for whatever reason, or they kind of reject the contract. And so, the hope is that we make awards. Those awards are, immediately, executed, the contract's executed, they provide their match. And remember that the companies only have to demonstrate matching funds for the first year of their contract. They don't have to demonstrate matching funds for the entirety of the contract. So, there should be, in our view, companies that are getting funded and for large grants in particular, need and should be able to demonstrate how they're going to raise their matching funds as part of the application process, rather than give me the award and then I'll figure out how I'm going to raise the matching funds. That generally does not work out. Some do, but generally not. So I mentioned the PDAC team. So this kind of just gives you a breakdown of the PDAC members, and kind of I think a really nice breakdown of investors, former CEOs, current CEOs. Some of them are awardees from CPRIT. We have 5 academic industry organization representatives, and then 3 advisors/consultants that are all kind of invested in the Texas biotech ecosystem. And so it's a really good balance, I think, and we have great participation. And in this next bullet, we've kind of last December, we decided we were going to really, challenge the PDAC to provide tangible results and feedback to the product development program. And we've started to do that through these working groups that we've created. One is, how do we ensure applicant success? And that can be success in, submitting a winning application, but it's also success in terms of once you get the application and you get the award, that you're able to raise your matching funds, you're ready to execute on the project. And it doesn't take a lengthy period of time in terms of, getting that started. Because I would be willing to bet, and I don't know if this is true or not, that the majority, if not all of the CPRIT awardees take more time to complete their projects than they probably expected when they originally submitted the application. So that's kind of where we've been spending a lot of our time. Working group 2 really was looking at, and this kind of started last year, kind of the revenue sharing component for CPRIT, return on investment, and some of the feedback that working group provided, went to Ken, and Ken brought it to you in May, and it led to some of the changes in the attachment C, which is the revenue sharing attachment to the base contract. And then working group 3 is really kind of to be an advisory to the executive team within CPRIT as you enter into the legislative season, which is obviously starting now. We remember from last session, there was questions about how does CPRIT, demonstrate return on investment. And so we want to be available and, either one to go testify in front of the, committees in the ledge, or to provide some type of report, because it's not just return on investment like the Cross Bridge. Clearly there's a return on that investment. But what is the greater economic impact of CPRIT in terms of funding these product development companies? And the shining example, many of you all know this, is Amadix. Amadix was awarded a large grant in 2015, and now they have a manufacturing facility in Sugar Land that 250 employees. They've raised, over $1 billion in, fundraising post CPRIT. MD Anderson was a party of that when they went public. So it's a tremendous story about how CPRIT was able to lure a company from Germany into Texas with MD Anderson, and the results that have ensued, I think is just a great case example of the success CPRIT. So we're really focused on kind of looking at these areas, and this is a little bit of a repeat of that prior slide. And I want to kind of jump into what we're thinking about in working group 1. The key issues are, that we're looking at are application review process, the reviewers, final application selection process, and matching funds conversions. And with the latter being very important, because if the company, if the company cannot raise matching funds, it may suggest that that company is in an area where no investor will go, or maybe it's a high unmet clinical need. And many of the pediatric cancers, are hard to fund because the patient populations are small. It's, it's kind of the whole rare disease area. Rare genetic diseases are very challenging to fund, because if you have a patient population of 100 patients, you can't invest $100 million to developing a commercial drug and hope that you're going to get a return on investment. So many investors will not go into rare diseases. And so it's really important. And there may be areas where we do want to go into those areas for the purposes of the unmet clinical need, but we want these companies to be able to raise matching funds. We want these companies not only matching funds, but to be able to have follow-on funding if the results are good. So kind of our initial observations is the market and the relative ease of preparing the preliminary apps is driving up the numbers. 207 preliminary applications is down to 27. That is a huge funnel going down to a small amount. And so it does make it challenging. I'm sure Ken, and he shared with us some of the challenges in terms of looking at all these applications in a very condensed time period and trying to pick the winners from the losers. And so it's very challenging. And so, we're thinking about that at the PDAC level too. How can we come up with ideas that may, support things that Patrick wants to do in the future? And, to kind of really narrow that down, we have some ideas on that. Just so you know, investor perception of a CPRIT award is neutral. Many people think I got the CPRIT award, I'm going to be able to go raise money now. The technical component of the company and their science is far more important with whether or not they have a CPRIT award, because anybody putting their money in is going to say, it's great that you got this funding. There are strings attached, but if I put my money in, I want to know that there's a good technical basis for that. The CPRIT award does help validate many of these companies. And so that is helpful. But in terms of, driving up the relative pre-money value of a company when you're doing a financing, the CPRIT award is neutral in that regard. So here's some of the questions that we're kind of asking ourselves as we kind of think about how can we advise the product development program. Given the number of applications, are we trying to be all things to all people? And what I mean by that is, we've thrown a humongous net out and say, we'll take any application of any type so long as it touches cancer. Well, no venture capital, firm, no investor does that. They all have an area they want to focus. And we've already have some precedent to that because we have our supplemental award, which goes to our existing CPRIT awardees. And so, the question is, are we missing some because we're throwing out this huge net? Should we, say, or let's say the main grant cycle, we are interested in therapeutics, or we are interested in, therapeutics in anti-drug conjugates, because we do get a lot and it really does tax reviewers. And I think one of the recommendations that we want to make is looking at whether or not a targeted RFP process for the main cycle, is appropriate because, as they say, follow the smart money. A lot of the smart money are the companies that Michelle pointed to in her opening slides, is that, where's the money going? Who is getting the money now? Is it technology driven? Oncology, we're seeing a resurgence in oncology, which is great for CPRIT, but it's still being picked over in terms of the type of therapeutics. Right now, many of you probably heard in May, pancreatic cancer has a new drug, daraxonrasib, that's been developed by Revolution Medicines. That drug was trialed at MD Anderson. Now the whole KRAS inhibitor field is attracting huge amounts of money. Revolution Medicines raised over almost $3 billion in the last 12 months for the commercialization of that drug. And so that tends to throw lots of investors into that kind of space. Do we have the right reviewers, and are they being matched with the right applications? That's always a question that we ask. And, now that we have 207 applications, I think it's a fair continued question to ask. And, if we selected, an area that we want CPRIT to do the RFA in, it was less open-netted and it was more targeted, you can handpick better reviewers perhaps for that particular area. The other thing that I think came out of 2024, you remember where we had a second award cycle, but we capped the amount at 5 million. That forced a lot of companies that were not seed companies, but larger grant companies to think, well, maybe I could do 5 million and do a project that takes only 18 months, come back to CPRIT, prove my worth at CPRIT, show that I can generate data and come back and then apply again. And so I think that even though that wasn't the thought process when we did that cycle, I think that notion, I think, is a good one, because particularly if it's a first-time awardee or a company coming out of, an institution, do we want them to take a $15 million grant? That's a lot of eggs in one unproven basket, so to speak. So that's something to be thinking about. Is there a process? And, the next slide will kind of go into some of these. And then the question that's always been discussed is, like, when we make an award, should we put them on the clock to execute the contract and to certify their matching funds? Remember, they only have to certify matching funds for year one. So if it's a $9 million award for 3 years and it's 3, 3, and 3, they have to raise $1.5 million and certify that match for year one. I mean, should they be given, several years to do that? And so, I do think that, the answer, there should be some limits on that. Because then that will go further upstream where the reviewers are really looking at whether or not these companies can raise the matching funds. And so it's another area to be thinking about. And then, other ideas that we've been thinking about is how can we help come alongside with Texas Venture, which is obviously interested in Texas companies, but to support them in terms of raising their matching funds. So kind of just jump to this slide, which we've talked a lot about already. But the third bullet really goes to the concept of this feeder system. I mean, theoretically, the seed awards could be the feeder for the next award. And what I like is that, and I would be willing, interested to hear what the reviewers have to say about this, is that if a company's already a CPRIT awardee, it's known, we've audited it. We know them better than someone that's coming in brand new. Should we create, giving you a lot of ideas here, Patrick.
Taking notes.
But should we create a feeder system where, as a first-time awardee, you're capped in terms of what you can ask for? Now, you have to balance that against the therapeutics, because we want them to go into clinical trials. If it's a biologic, their main costs are clinical trial costs and manufacturing costs, and then the company costs come third. If it's a small molecule drug, the manufacturing costs, so in a biologic, the manufacturing costs are $5, $6, $7 million. If it's a small molecule drug, it's $1.5 million. So those are just some serious big time costs that they have to spend in order to even launch that phase 1 trial. So the second to last bullet, we were thinking about, why don't we do kind of a survey of the CPRIT reviewers that the PDAC runs. And, we ask them questions about, because they're the ones who are seeing these applications, and we like to critique them because of what they didn't do and what they did do, but they really have the most knowledge about what's coming down the pipe. And so one of the ideas is that we do an anonymous survey, and they can tell us who they are, they want, but and then the PDAC will take that information and will generate a report for CPRIT. And then the last item before we wrap up is considering opportunities where we can bring investor syndicates earlier into the process, where CPRIT applications are being submitted, and that can kind of run a parallel track. And so there are some ideas that we have along that we'll be bringing to Kristen and Patrick and Ken and Jasmine, in the months to come. But we do think that having the ability to better select applicants who have the ability to raise capital, I mean, it's a indicator. The ability to raise capital is an indicator of someone else looking at and weighing these companies and these technologies in a way that, would I put my own money into it? And so in summary, PDAC is very encouraged by the progress over the past years. It's a testament to, Wayne and Kristen and Ken, who really have turned the program to make it a shining star. Some of these recent successes, and many of you probably have heard, Lilly yet again, and BMS have declared their intents to invest almost $5 billion in manufacturing capabilities outside of Houston. And then the Crossbridge exit was a great example of what CPRIT can do, along with the Maddox, which I mentioned earlier. We have to be able to adapt to the changing environment and the ecosystem for investment. And, that's why I think, different from the research grants and the prevention grants, PD needs to be flexible. It needs to look at different ways in which to prepare and solicit, applications, and also be strategic about how we do that. That will ultimately lead to more cross bridges. And there are some cross bridges in the pipeline right now that CPRIT is funded. And so we'll hopefully those will have great exits. And, really focusing on enhancing those companies that are coming out of out of the ecosystem here in Texas. And that's what's exciting when you see a Crossbridge or immunogenesis, where it really was people who CPRIT invested in on the research side are creating these amazing technologies that are coming out and they're taking off. And so with that, I think I'll stop talking and, we'll entertain any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Strong or Dr. Park? Yes, Dr. Rosenfeld.
Good morning, Andrew. It's always a pleasure seeing you once a year, you and Michelle, and wish it was more often. I'd like to push you on a few things, if you don't mind.
Push.
For some more specific recommendations, both to the Oversight Committee and the Product Development Committee, and see what you think. For the Product Development Committee, as I go around the state, I hear a lot of people say, boy, I wish CPRIT would change the ratio of seed funding to bigger funding. Why don't we fund more companies at $3 million rather than say one company at $15 million and take more shots on goal? So I'd like to know, does the PDAC think the ratio of funding seed to larger funding is correct where it is, or needs to be altered, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question. It's something we think about a lot, Dr. Rosenfeld. The smaller the grants, let's say the seeds, the further you go up into the pipeline, right? Yeah, come back into where you're at R&D, and the seed is truly R&D. We are not generating clinical data out of the seed awards, right? There's more risk, right? We all accept that there's a better chance that those will not succeed than a company that's in the clinic and has clinical data. And so because when you're in the clinic and you're getting clinical data, a $3 million award is not a game changer. And you're not going to move your company from, Korea or Germany to Texas for a $3 million award. You need to have, it needs to be more meaningful, right? And so I think there is a balance. And the real question is, is there somewhere in the middle? $3 million, $1 million is not going to do it. And it creates a compliance nightmare for CPRIT if they had 50 $1 million awards versus 5, larger awards, right?
Okay, well, thank you. The second has to do with portfolio diversification. CPRIT has awarded sometimes, 5, 6, 7 awards to the same strategy, the same target, or the same.
Yeah. GBM.
I'll just leave it there. But do you think that CPRIT should actively review their portfolio, either to diversify it on one end? Well, I'll just leave it there. Should CPRIT actively look at their portfolio and diversify it?
Yeah, I mean, that's why you have this guy right here. I do think that, it's like the rare disease issue, right? If all you did was rare diseases, and there's no question about it, that should be a grant, right? That should not be an investment or a contract with a revenue share, because most rare diseases, and I spend a lot of time, I work with a lot of family foundations that are pursuing rare genetic diseases or rare pediatric diseases. You cannot raise capital in those companies. You have to find foundations. And so it is important, I think, to look at what's going on in the ecosystem, where the money is going, from Michelle's firm and other firms like hers. They are more in tune with potential exit opportunities and advancing these drugs and getting the follow-on funding than I think we are, right? I mean, so I do think that you know, and that also could go to the targeted RFP process where you look at things or you tell the applicants what they're interested in. Michelle, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. It's really hard to predict where you're going to see big pharma all of a sudden gravitate. But I do think that the diversification, whether it's across modality, whether it's across, the tumor type, right? Because you have to think about the markets you're addressing. I think that that is important to think about. There are some periods of time where cell therapy was out of favor, right? And then we had a year where there were a handful of great exits from cell therapy companies, but you just can't predict it. And so I do think that, the committee does a great job of being able to take a look at what's out there. But in the end, it's going to also depend on what feels most de-risked and what's addressing an unmet need, and what is going to address, a sizable market.
Thank you. And my third, and this is my last guy. And you touched on this, is sort of follow-on funding. So we talked about Pulmatech earlier. And do you think it's a good idea or not a good idea for CPRIT to provide a form of follow-on funding? And the reason I ask that is the more follow-on funding, the less the less money there is
Yeah.
for new companies. So
Well,
just
you're
wondering your
already
thoughts.
doing that. You're doing that through the supplemental cycle.
Correct. And so do you think that's a good what we should be doing? Or do you think we should not be doing the
I
supplemental?
think having that tool in your toolbox is essential. As an agency. And I think that like I said, the supplemental process, companies can come to you and they can, they get an opportunity and you now have a small cohort of applicants. And so you can manage that far better and about those companies. Follow-on funding in its true sense is I've invested in the company in the A round, the B round comes, I'm going to go pro rata as an insider into that B round, right? I mean, that's how we understand it. CPRIT's kind of outside that realm, right? Because of the way it funds. And so it can't really follow any particular cycle. And, when it does invest in companies, where we do an equity deal, CPRIT cannot be compelled to invest. I mean, because it just doesn't work that way. It's out of cycle, right?
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Always great talking to you and Michelle.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Strong and Dr. Park. We appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Ms. Dole to present the Health and Safety Code Section 102.1062 waivers for fiscal year 2027.
Members, you have several waivers behind, I believe, tab 10 in your book. There's 3 waivers. 2 of them are for CPRIT employees, for Mr. Ellis and Mr. Allen, because of family members that are employed by entities that receive grant funding from us. The third waiver is a general waiver for review council members. Those, this situation occasionally comes up where a review council member may have a conflict with a particular application. They recuse themselves, don't participate in the discussion or the scoring when it's at the panel. But once those review council members are required to get together as a group to make a slate recommendation, there was some concern a number of years ago. What does that mean in terms of the conflict? So we created that conflict of interest waiver. All 3 of these waivers that are in your book, you have approved at least 1 fiscal year before. Some of them you've approved for many years.
Are there any questions from Ms. Doyle? Members, is there a motion to approve the 3 fiscal year 2027 conflict of interest waivers? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The chair now recognizes Mr. Ellis to discuss proposed rule amendments to chapters 701 and 703.
The wait is now over and we can get to the exciting stuff. Doing some regulatory changes here. So we actually have two rule change matters for the Oversight Committee to consider today. You'll find the materials related to both of them behind tab 11 in your board book. Before I go into each proposal, I would say neither of these proposed rule changes is a significant change in CPRIT policy or procedures. This is more of a matter of codifying things that we do or clarifying things that we do. So the first is a change to CPRIT Rule 703.23. We're here this meeting with a motion to move forward with final adoption of the rule. You may recall that you approved publication of that proposed change at the meeting back in May. This is the rule that would codify CPRIT's practice with regard to 10% holdback to make sure that grantees complete all of the closeout obligations on bonds. So we did publish that with the Secretary of State. CPRIT did receive one comment on that particular rule. The commenter provided one request for clarification and two suggested changes to the rule. After reviewing those, CPRIT doesn't think that those changes are necessary or consistent with the policy goals we're trying to accomplish here. So we're recommending that we move forward with the rule as originally published. But to be more specific, the commenter pointed out, one, that they advocated that we should restrict the application of the rule outside of the product development grant contract context to grantees who had active or open audit findings or a demonstrated history of noncompliance. By definition, that wouldn't really get at the risks we're trying to address here, because number one, closeout obligations wouldn't show up on an audit finding that was during the ongoing grant process. And number two, what we're in many cases most concerned about is new grantees who are not familiar with CPRIT processes and their ability to comply with the process. So they by definition don't have a demonstrated history of compliance or non. So we didn't think that that was a workable suggestion for the rule. It would have been counterproductive to our goals. They also suggested that we limit the withholding to 10% of the final invoice payable under a grant. And there certainly are grants in which the final invoice is more than 10% of the total amount of the grant. But there are many more cases where that final invoice is a much smaller amount of money. So that would actually be a significant reduction in the practice that we have right now with regard to withholding that. In many cases, it would be hard to blame a grantee who's down and has only a few $1,000 literally left in their reimbursement for concluding that the obligation to comply with those closeout requirements simply wasn't worth it if the holdback were limited to that 10%. The third point, they requested clarification on how the rule would apply where a grantee reached 90% of the total grant consumption before the final year of the grant. Although we don't believe there's a textual ambiguity, we did provide some clarity with how we would apply that rule in the response that you'll see in the final order there in your board book. So if the committee approves, the next step is for us to file the final order with the Secretary of State, and that will move forward with actually amending the rule so that it becomes the positive law governing CPRIT's operations. Be happy to answer any questions about that change the committee might have.
Any questions? So that was 703.23, is that correct? Members, is there a motion to approve the final order amending CPRIT Rule 703.23 and file the order with the Secretary of State? All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And then were you going to explain 701.23? Okay.
So we're also here today with a proposed rule for publication. Proposed rule change for publication. This would be the first step in the process where we would publish in the Texas Register a proposed change to CPRIT Rule 701.23, which is the rule whereby the Oversight Committee has set a broad policy and goal with regard to grantee utilization of historically underutilized businesses. This is another case where there is not any real change in our policy. It's simply providing clarity to grantees that recognize the unique circumstances that our grantees face when it comes to their subcontracting goals. So our broad rule says that it's the policy of CPRIT for grantees to make a good faith effort to subcontract with historically underutilized businesses and requires them to report on that once a year as part of their progress reports. The language we're proposing to add would simply specify that in determining what constitutes a good faith effort, we will take into account the nature of the goods and services that are relied on by cancer researchers, the very specialized nature and, quite frankly, limited worldwide supply of those goods and services is a consistent issue that grantees face. It's not uncommon that they need to rely on goods or services that are available from only one or two, or in fact, sometimes no vendors located in Texas. And in order to be a Texas historically underutilized business, they have to obviously be located in Texas. So the language we're proposing to add to the rule would just specify that all of those are relevant factors in determining what constitutes a good faith effort for purposes of our compliance. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, members, is there a motion to publish the proposed rule changes to Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 701.23 in the Texas Register?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Turning to agenda item 14, the chair recognizes Mr. Weaver to present the Chief Financial Officer's report. Good morning.
Good morning. Glad to be with y'all. With all due respect to John and his administrative rule updates, our compliance colleagues and their riveting materials, the life-affirming medicine and scientific breakthroughs we've heard about this morning, we now have reached the main event with the Chief Financial Officer.
We look forward to this.
Yes, I know you do. I'm bringing the thunder today just for you. No, but we have had a busy slate, so I'll try to keep my overview remarks fairly brief, but as usual, feel free to follow up with any questions if I don't describe something adequately. So this will be a status update of our budget and other matters as of the third quarter of fiscal year 2026, ending May 31st. With respect to our operating budget, the two administrative categories that we maintain are direct operating strategy and indirect. As you would expect, each of those essentially funds our staff salaries and major service contracts. And so with 3/4 of the fiscal year elapsed as of May 31st, we had obligated about 88% of our $5.4 million indirect administrative budget with 3 months of salaries left to pay. And, 66% of our indirect administrative strategy and 88% of our direct administrative strategy, which I would remind you is where our GDIT grant management support services major contract lives, and also our grant management platform capital project. Those two alone account for about 2/3 of that budget. So again, as you would expect, 3/4 of the year elapsed, we've obligated most of those funds with essentially salaries left to pay through the year. With respect to revenue, during the third quarter, we collected about $325,000. As usual, that was primarily attributable to our WellReg royalty payments. Continuing the theme we've discussed the past few sessions, I've told you all, and we have been seeing the headlines about expanding sales of that drug to different markets internationally. We're still seeing U.S. sales continuing to grow, but the proportion of the overall pie that the U.S. represents is declining. So it's a great position to be in. Our biggest market is still increasing in sales, but we're not as reliant upon that. And so to compare our first quarter calendar year 2026 Weller egg receipts to the same quarter in calendar year 2025. The US sales in 2026 first quarter accounted for about 152 million in total. Compare that to the prior year, it was only about $122 million in sales, so a $30 million sales increase. But relative to the overall pie, the US's proportion shrank to about 77% of total sales in the first quarter of 2026, whereas it had accounted for about 90% consistently in first quarter 2025, second quarter, third quarter. So continuing to see sales growth in the US, but perhaps more interestingly, around the world, those sales continue to increase as well. Regard to our performance measures, the number served from our prevention efforts is continuing to perform very well. In the third quarter, we served about 210,000 people. We've already eclipsed our performance goal of 775,000 for the year, with a full quarter left to go. And as y'all might recall, last year in 2025, we set a new high watermark, so to speak, in that measure. Technically, we're off that pace very slightly this year, but the headline, I would say, is another very successful year shaping up for the performance number served in prevention activities performance metric. And also through the third quarter, we still have not had any company relocations yet this fiscal year, but still one more quarter to go to collect those measures. With respect to bonds, we issued the third tranche of our anticipated 298 million for the fiscal year back in March. And in my previous update to y'all in May, there were some questions about what the prevailing interest rates were at the time, and as state leadership provided any guidance on a go-forward basis for how we should assume interest rates will behave. Both in March and in June, our short-term issuances of taxable commercial paper carried about a 4 to 4.25% interest rate. Subsequently, since our May meeting, obviously we've received the official instructions from state leadership as far as preparing our legislative appropriations request, which we have now completed. But as part of those instructions, they communicated that agencies should use a 6% long-term financing rate, which is unchanged from previous biennium. But just curiously, for anyone who follows the market, just yesterday, I believe the US 30-year treasuries hit a 20-year high, and CPRIT has a refunding transaction of all of our outstanding commercial paper that will be priced and sold here in the next couple of days. And so I'll check in with our friends at TPFA for more current information as far as prevailing interest rates. But based on everything we have been told and everything historically, as of now, no significant changes to assume interest rates. And then finally, pursuant to the General Appropriations Act, Article 9, Section 14.01, state agencies have the authority to move up to 20% between their direct strategy appropriations. And so just as an informational item, I wanted to notify you that CEO has authorized a transfer of 2.8 million from our research grant award strategy to our direct grant award and review operations administrative strategy, and that will fund supplemental sprint and scrum activities on the grant management system replacements to ensure that we have optimal and robust out-of-the-box functionality when we put our pens down in October and march towards our January 2027 go live. Again, we have that authority in the General Appropriations Act, and then specifically CPRIT's Rider 3 in our bill pattern directs us to notify the Legislative Budget Board and the governor when we make such a transfer. So we will notify them in the coming days, but before we do that, we wanted to notify you all. So that concludes my CFO overview. No action items, but pause for any questions y'all may have.
Any questions for Mr. Weaver? Okay. The chair recognizes Chief Financial Officer Grant Weaver to present the proposed fiscal year 2027 contracts and contract renewal.
Right. Well, during the audit subcommittee meeting, we brought these contracts, recommended them to the audit subcommittee to recommend to you all, to approve these contracts at today's meeting. Without belaboring it too much, we have 6 major contracts that we're requesting your approval for. 2 of them are brand new as a result of competitive solicitations staff has carried out over the spring, resulting in our recommendation of a new contract award for Allen Boyd Consultants for our due diligence reviews, and one of our outside counsel agreements with Norton Rose and Fulbright. And then in addition to those new contracts, we have 4 renewals of existing agreements, one for our other outside counsel agreement with McDermott, Will, Schulte, the economic cost of cancer in Texas report with the Perryman Group, business and financial management solutions for our peer review monitoring services, and finally, our internal audit services with Weaver and Tidwell. Each of these cross our $100,000 threshold requiring oversight committee approval. And so we are bringing those 6 to you for your approval this morning. And in addition to those major contracts, we also have 2 other contracts that fall below that $100,000 threshold that we will be renewing. But many of you, most of y'all have received our request for your financial disclosure statements through the CPRIT portal. So I very much appreciate all of y'all who've had a chance to fill those out. Any of y'all who have not, I will accost you in the hallway after this meeting, and that will allow us to move expeditiously as we enter the new fiscal year and execute those contracts. So with that said, I believe there is an action item for you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Weaver, for bringing up the financial disclosures. So those of you who have not submitted yours, please do. I would not want to be accosted in the hallway.
I'm
Are there any
nice. I'm
other
nice.
questions for Mr. Weaver? Okay, is there a motion to approve the contracts and contract renewals at the amounts presented by Mr. Weaver with the following companies: Allen Boyd Consultants, Inc., Norton Rose Fulbright, McDermott, Will, and Schulte, Business and Financial Management Solutions, the Perryman Group, and Weaver and Tidwell?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, another highly anticipated presentation. The chair recognizes Mr. Graves to present the internal auditor report.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. I do have 5 reports to present to you today. Wow, that's a lot of reports. I don't think it's going to take long. And that's a testament to the secret staff and their diligence, because 3 of those 5 are follow-up reports. And so that's what I'll start with, because that's the order that's on the agenda. So in your packet on page 14-4, we have our follow-ups for our P-card advisory procedures from last year. In those advisory procedures, we had 2 improvements. Just as a reminder, our advisory audits, we don't provide risk ratings because those are more consultative in nature. They're not explicitly internal audit findings by the Institute of Internal Auditors definition of a finding. And so those were just, we classified them as process improvements, but both of those have been remediated as part of that report. So you'll see in that report, the 2 recommendations we made, both were addressed and completely implemented by staff in our follow-up procedures this year. So again, a very positive outcome there with that report. Our second report to present to you is a very similar story. On page 14-12 of your packet, we did perform an internal audit over non-grant expenditures. We did have 4 findings in that report in last year. However, in our follow-up procedures this year, we did identify that all 4 of those were also remediated. And then our third follow-up report to present to you is we performed an audit last year over post-award grant management. And that really focused on the procedures for reviewing, approving, and dispersing grantee reimbursements. There were 5 findings in that report last year. In our follow-up procedures this year, we identified 4 of those were remediated. 1 of those was closed by management. In our follow-up procedures, we identified that there was significant improvements made by staff on the on a portion of the process related to that finding. But we didn't feel from an internal audit perspective, we could call it closed yet. But in our discussions with management, in our exit meeting, and our review with the implementation of the new grant management platform that is expected to completely remediate that. And so management has just accepted that remaining little bit of risk and closed that finding. And so with that, all the findings from our 3 reports that we issued last year are remediated or closed. And so that's the bulk of those follow-up. Well, that's all of those follow-up procedures. The only other report related to the current year internal audit plan that I have, starting on page 14-35, in our fiscal year 2026 plan, we have an advisory audit over intellectual property compliance. We dove into that and we've identified we really need to separate that into 2 parts. So this is the report over phase 1. The phase 2 report will come early next year in next year's reporting. The reason for that is because there's really 2 separate parts to this. There's one of what is CPRIT doing to review, monitor the intellectual property compliance, specifically the remission of the shared revenues back in the contracts from the researching partners and the grantees. And the second phase is really centered around the activities at the academic research institutes. And so we will actually be going and talking with some of those institutions, talking about what their processes are that will help identify and provide CPRIT more information on what additional procedures CPRIT can do, what additional information they can ask for to better manage and really monitor and have an understanding of what's going on and the reporting of those royalties and licensing revenue streams. And so that phase 2 will come next year. So this is phase 1. We didn't really have any findings or recommendation because it's an advisory, any recommendations for improvement just yet. We wanted to see the full picture. And so you'll get all of those in our reporting early next year when we report phase 2. With those reports, that completes the reporting for our internal audit plan for 2026. I only have 2 other things, our annual plan and our annual report, but I'll pause if there's any questions over the reports for this year.
Any questions for Mr. Graves on the audit procedures performed this year? Thank you.
Okay.
Keep going.
So on page 14-3, kind of jumping back, is our chart that summarizes all the current open findings. And so I'll just call your attention. The top set of the graph really indicates what we did in last year of 2025. Fiscal year 2026 is below that, but really the last one is really probably the most important for you. And I just wanted to call out specifically that there's only one audit that we have anything to follow up on in our fiscal year 2027, and that is the audit that we performed this year over information security. So that is just another testament to CPRIT staff and their diligent follow-up on any of the internal audit findings that we don't have anything from historical years past that remain open. The next 2 things on page 14-40 is our proposed plan for the fiscal year 2027 internal audit plan. So every year we perform a risk assessment update, and based on our internal audit standards and the Texas Internal Audit Act, we update our risk assessment and then develop a risk-based internal audit plan. What you see in your packet here is the plan that we proposed for fiscal year 2027. It includes a information security audit. So in our discussions with our IT group, they have requested that we actually have reoccurring annual information security audits. And I think the agency's at a point historically, we've only done one a year for IT or one every other year to give time for rate of change. But I think we're at a place where annual audits of information security, we're in a place where we can do that. And so this year is really about the security assessment and personnel security. Some of the outcomes of that will be a multi-year strategy for ongoing and future information security plans, for audit plans. So we will take a holistic look at the entire information security program through this and the risk assessment, and we'll have a multi-year plan as part of that will be an outcome. The other two are a sunset review preparedness as the agency prepares to go into sunset in future years. This is a stem off of the advisory procedures we performed this year for the efficiency audit, and we will actually utilize some of the information from the SAO's efficiency audit in our planning for the sunset preparedness. And then the third one is an application development and management audit. So this is the one area of IT that we haven't ever audited. And the scope of this is really going to focus on the core processes of in-house developed applications, IT applications, and the controls around development, review, approval, and the ability to promote those into the production environment. So we're going to look at some very specific areas and concentrated focus on those core activities for that audit. We'll have follow-up procedures over this year's information security, and then we'll have our annual reporting. So this is the proposed plan that we're asking for the Oversight Committee's approval. The last report I have for you is our annual internal audit report. And this one is a statutorily required report by the Texas Internal Audit Act. So every year, pursuant to that act, we are required to complete this report. The contents of this report are prescribed by the state auditor's office. This year is a little unique. Normally we present this and it's ready to go. I'm asking for provisional approval of this report. And the reason for that is from our standpoint, the report's ready, but the state auditor's office has not yet published the official guidance for fiscal year 2026. So we prepared this based on the guidance published for fiscal year 2025. I did check this morning before I came up here, and that guidance is not yet posted. Normally they post it early August. They just haven't gotten there yet. So if there is substantial changes to the requirements for this, we will bring it back to you. I don't anticipate. I think the last change, or the last guidance change that affected CPRIT was 1 or 2 years ago, where they moved what was item number 2 in the report. They moved it down to item number 5. And so there's been nothing earth shattering over the last 6 or 8 years for that would affect CPRIT. So I'm pretty confident in this. The 7 sections are pretty, well, they're prescribed to us, and they haven't changed from last year. Most are disclosures of how we will post this report, or CPRIT will post this report to their website as required by the Internal Audit Act. Disclosure on the status of our fiscal 26 plan, all of which the reports are complete. A disclosure if internal audit did any consulting. And so we did disclose this year the intellectual property and efficiency preparedness audits were part of, would be considered consulting under the internal audit act, or under the internal audit standards. The next is a disclosure on who your external auditor is, if you've procured any external audit services. So we've included that. The following is our peer review. So that's the audit of your auditors. That's our most recent peer review report. The next is the fiscal year 2027 plan that I presented to you. And the final is just disclosure on how the agency handles fraud, waste, and abuse reports. And so if you have any questions over that, I'll be happy to answer them. But again, this is asking for the provisional approval of this pending any changes and requirements from the state auditor's office.
Are there any questions for Mr. Graves on the internal audit report, on the 2026 annual internal audit report, or the 2027 internal audit plan? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the following internal audit reports? Fiscal year 2027 internal audit plan, fiscal year 2026 annual internal audit report, internal audit follow-up procedures report over purchasing cards advisory procedures, internal audit follow-up procedures report over non-grant expenditures, internal audit follow-up procedures report over post-award grant monitoring, intellectual property compliance advisory engagement, phase 1 audit advisory report. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. Moving on to agenda item 17, the chair recognizes Ms. McConnell to give an update on the 2026 CPRIT Innovations Conference.
Good morning. Lots of things to report this morning about the upcoming conference on October 5th, 5th through 7th. One thing, as Dr. Hudson mentioned this morning during his presentation about the Clinical Trials Advisory Group, they're going to be having a meeting on the 5th, the day before the official start of the conference. There will be several other small group meetings, in addition to a new CPRIT meeting that will occur the afternoon of the 5th, that will focus on revenue sharing terms. It'll be a discussion with several invited tech transfer offices from institutions of higher education. So that will be with our attorneys at CPRIT. And then in terms of conference registration, we've now exceeded 400 registrants. There was a notice sent out last week. It was the last week of the regular registration, and late registration started this past Monday. So, that kind of bumped us up in terms of numbers, and it will continue to do so. I think also institutions of higher education, faculty, students are returning, starting classes in the new semester in the next few weeks. So I think they will start paying attention if they're interested in attending the conference and register then. We're also have some more sponsors and exhibitors since we met. Viva Systems is our conference badge sponsor, so we now have 3 sponsors. There's also a potential vendor who wants to be a notebook sponsor, so that's being worked on. We have 6 exhibitors. The newest one is Silver Gene Laboratories. We continue to receive notices of interest in the sponsorship and exhibitors packages. The program is set. It is published on our website. All of the sessions are now complete, so you can check that out if you're interested. In terms of abstracts, we received approximately 270 abstracts. Those are being finalized now in terms of acceptances. So those abstracts will be on display in the 2 poster sessions that will occur on days 1 and 2 of the conference. The Texans Conquer Cancer Awards have been finalized. In June, the Texans Conquer Cancer Award Committee met and finalized the recommendations for 4 of our CPRIT grantees to receive these awards. And in addition, they approved the CEO selection of 2 individuals for the CPRIT, the Champion Award. So those individuals will be recognized at the dinner on the 5th. I think that is all I have to report. So unless there are any questions.
Any questions for Ms. McConnell? Oh, yes, Dr. Rosenfeld.
Just a quick question. So all the abstracts that are submitted are not accepted?
I mean, generally, pretty much the majority of them are sometimes, but right now it's actually, we've received some requests for some late submissions. So that's why it's we're trying to accommodate some of those.
And these are all poster presentations?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McConnell. The chair recognizes Chief Information and Data Security Officer, Mr. Soma Emaneki, to provide an update on CPRIT's Grant Management Platform Modernization Project.
Good morning.
Morning.
Still morning.
Version 1.0 is live. So we went live yesterday, around 10 a.m. We looked at the current users in our GMP and invited over 3,000 users. And as of an hour ago, we have about 930 users that have logged into the GMP. The team is actively working through tickets this morning. Account issues where users are not properly claiming the accounts, but we're working through that. It's I would say about 15, 20 tickets. But given we're about a little bit over 30% of the claim, so over the week, I think we should be at least close to 50%. A lot of accounts that we invited bounced, as expected, because either they've changed organizations or those accounts are not available. We did take a step back in the beginning of July to do testing. We did internal testing with CPRIT staff. We did external with 3 organizations. And as Dee had mentioned on the May OC, that it was very helpful that we did that, and we did. And so the feedback we got was very tremendous. It helped us reshape some of the workflow that we had in the system. The very huge feedback we got from one of the institution was not understanding the workflow at their institution because, we don't have access to what they do. And so that helped us redefine with council operations and Kristen, we redefined a role that was very unique that we did not anticipate for, but I'm proud to announce that we were able to deploy that into the GMP. And I got a feedback from that institution that it would be very helpful. That affects larger organizations, not necessarily the smaller ones, but again, always welcome to the feedback that we receive. And giving those users the opportunity to test the GMP will continuously allow us to refine the GMP to enhance the GMP. It needs to work for CPRIT and also our grantees. I did get a feedback that this is the first time any federal or state or government agency has offered testing to external users that we know of to participate and actually listen to their feedback. So the GMP is really, it's again, version 1. We anticipate version 2 to go live in January. Right now, it's the application intake. It will accept 27.2 applications and through administrative review, peer review, and we anticipate to move all the data from our current system in about the November timeline with what I would call a small load at the end of January to complete the move. So we are really excited about it. Really proud of the feedback, really proud of the CPRIT team, because as Kristen always says, thousands of hours, and also the DIR team. I would say we're very fortunate to have a great technical team that has collaborated with CPRIT to ensure that this GMP works for us and for the grantees. That concludes my update. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yes, please.
Mr.
Is the benefit of bringing this system in-house logistical or financial or both? And can you unpack those for us, the benefits that we're seeing as opposed to contracting this whole system out?
Absolutely. I will answer the logistical and Heidi can answer the financial. From a logistical standpoint, it gives CPRIT the visibility that we never had into the current GMP. CPRIT now has access to see and change the process as we know it today to work for us from an efficiency standpoint. We're able to manage the level of involvement from a third party to assist the programs in their processes. But also gives us that ability to run reports that would help us change or identify the bottlenecks. From a technical perspective as well, it allows us to enhance the system with direct conversation with the programs or the affected areas. Because we're bringing this in-house working with DIR, we have direct control on making those changes quicker than we can do today. And on the financial side?
So one thing on the financial side, just to underscore what Soma said, is that this contract, the contract for the new GMP is actually a DIR contract. It is a state contract. So that means that CPRIT does not have to go out for bid on its own to get a system. That is all done by DIR, and it's through their technology solution services. So that is one of the biggest financial benefits to CPRIT, is that we do not have to go through that contracting process ourselves. In terms of the cost, and now this is apples to oranges, so it's not exact. And because of the way the contract with GDIT is structured, it is a services contract. It is for overall grant management support, not just with a platform, but it's people, their people resources that have augmented the staff that we have, because, you know, we only have a handful really of program staff between academic research, product development research, and prevention. So, you know, there are hundreds of other hours that go into, you know, application receipt and peer review than those that are just performed by our staff. So that is wrapped up in that contract with GDIT, in conjunction with the use of their proprietary platforms for application receipt, peer review, and then the grant management, post-award grant management platform that we developed based on their proprietary system. So it's roughly a $2 million a year savings. Now, that's very rough. Again, it's apples and oranges, because what I can glean out of their hours, you know, compared to what we're paying through the DIR contract, you know, that is an approximation. So
What parts of the GDIT services package do we eliminate with the use of the new GMP system?
it is all of their essentially IT support for all of those proprietary systems, and even the security. Like we have to pay to have. There's a SOC 2 report that's required annually that we have to pay for them to have to verify that their system is secure. It's required by state law through DIR. So it's also those kinds of costs that we no longer, and that again, from like security is already rolled up into the contract with DIR. So we don't have to, that's transparent to us. We don't have to worry about that anymore. It's on DIR to make sure that that occurs.
DIR.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and there is a small upcharge to DIR for that service to have that contract. But again, they are contracting for the entire state, for all the state agencies. And so it is really a true benefit to us.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Excuse me, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay.
I will add, Madam Chair, before we move on, there are a couple also intangibles that we can't quantify yet. I mean, one, this will allow us to more fully use AI and have AI overlay. So not only will that help us, I think, from an administrative perspective, but potentially also in terms of peer review. And again, I'll emphasize for the record, we're not going to have AI do our peer review, but it helps in some of those processes. Also, this will dramatically increase our ability to look at the data that we can see in the system, everything from compliance and processing in terms of grant accounting. I mean, you've heard us talk many times when we, are introducing rules. We've talked about where we think the biggest areas of problems are and travel. We will be able to interrogate the system for really good data on that also that will improve our processes. And then also, of course, the data that will be able to track across all of our grants, progress reports, all of that information. So that is, those are our hopes and dreams that will really benefit CPRIT also. Now, the other part of that is the work that we are putting in to this system, again, because it's through DIR, other high-profile grant agencies, I think, will also be able to benefit from this, most notably CPRIT. But there we have, because of the work that we've been doing, we've talked with other agencies potentially about, their use of some or all of the components that we've been working on. So I started, my comments with the CEO activities update, I think I did this. I've praised the state auditor's office staff. I can't remember if I did it in this meeting, but I've done it on the subcommittee meetings. They were very collegial. They've helped us in terms of the efficiency audit, as many hours as it's been and all of the work, we are getting tangible feedback from, another state agency, that is going to improve our processes. And they were very collegial and professional. I will end saying, how helpful DIR has been through this process to us also. All of the work that SOMA has been doing with DIR and with Deloitte, and obviously everybody in the agency will, benefit CPRIT and hopefully the state of Texas for years to come. So we are lucky. You don't often praise, especially the more bureaucratic agencies of of the state, but the work that they do really is helping us be able to direct more money to grants. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor.
Who's going to get to push the button when everything goes hard?
Okay, thank you. The Oversight Committee will not take up agenda items 19, 20, 21, and 22. Turning to agenda item 23, CPRIT has included a schedule of fiscal year 2027 meeting dates, beginning with the next regular Oversight Committee meeting, which shall take place on November 18, 2026. Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 2027 quarterly meeting dates? All in favor, vote aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. If there is no further business and there is no objection, the chair moves to adjourn this meeting. Is there a second? All in favor? Motion carries. The meeting stands adjourned at 11:59 a.m.